Good evening, everyone, and welcome. We're so happy to have so many of you here, and very special welcome and thank you to the success story team that is here and that is going to join us. Yeah, if we can wave, and I can see who is there. Yeah, Graham, Hugo, Chris. Yeah, really excited to have you. I just want to share before we start the screening that this is probably one of the documentary that moved me the most in my entire life. When I saw it the first time, I think a year ago, uh, tears, anger, excitement, like I went through so many emotions. And somehow a year later, Hannah, hi, I know you're here on the call tonight. Anna mentioned that she knew some of you and talk about the work and say, oh my God, this is incredible. So I'm really excited to be able to offer this to our community tonight. And we had a lot of interest. And we have a bunch of people I could not hear tonight that will look at the recording. And so I wanted to thank you, all of you, for being here. I'm going to let you dive into the 1 hour and 15 minutes of the documentary. And at the end, we'll have all the team joining us here. And if you have a question and things that you want to ask them, please feel free to drop your question in the chat. And we'll try to cover everything. So without further ado, enjoy and relax, and see you all at the end of the documentary.
It's been an honor and a privilege to be with all you guys through this season. Who here has heard the phrase, be a man? You know, we all have, right? The idea is that if you're not a man, you're a girl or a woman. And the inference being that somehow that's less than. You have to act a certain way to be a man. And that's something that led me to prison. If you keep crying, I'm gonna give you something to cry for. That was the rule in my house. And that's something that allowed me to shut down when things came up. I ended up getting addicted to heroin in prison because of that, basically. I mean, I couldn't face reality.
I grew up in a household where my dad was in charge. He worked every day. He supported the family. He didn't say much, but he was the man of the house. And, coming up, what are we supposed to be? The man of the house. So when I'm hearing, this patriarchy and I'm hearing the negative aspects and all that, I had them in my household. Boys don't cry. Those things, it doesn't take any of us a genius added to me sitting right here with 32 years of life in this place.
We get to choose what type of man we become in life. And it's always been our choice, and it always will be. So the question lies, what kind of man will you be?
Richie's really helped me step out of my comfort zone too. And I appreciate you for starting this group, for giving me the opportunity to facilitate. Man, you really opened my eyes to some powerful things in my life. I never would have challenged that patriarchal way of thinking, because of my beliefs and my faith and my upbringing. And even when all of us went against you when it came to that patriarchal conversation, you remained firm in that. And I admire your courage. I admire your everything about you, man. You're somebody that I look up to, and it's not just because you're 6'4" and I'm 5'8". Hey, but I love you, brother. Nothing but love from the bottom of my heart to the top. You're a real one to me.
The realest thing that I could say is that I'm fake is what? And if you wait enough, you might just hear me say some other stuff that's just a little true. It isn't you. I was never papered up. In my crew, I was a little dude. I banged just to look tough. Men who are whole can speak their fear without shame. This is a story of how I lost myself and really never found me. I lost 4 out of 5 of my fights in the county. When males are required to wear the mask of a false self, they cannot experience joy and they can never truly love. He was jealous of the kids whose mamas let him go to parties, so he got high and made beats to feel part of the culture partly. If a man is not willing to break patriarchal rules that say he should never change, he will turn away from loved ones and choose his manhood over his personhood, isolation over connectedness. A Will to Change, page 188. Those are my favorite ones. Straight nerd, insecure, and hated rules. Man, I hope the homies still let me bump my music and think I'm cool. Thank you.
All right, fellas. It's all right. Another season. For those of you guys that don't know what Success Stories is about, look, it would be a lie to say that the majority, if not all of us, have sold out at one point or another and basically ignored what's important. And the proof to that is the fact that we're all wearing blue. And then just appreciating, actually giving you some space to open up on all the amazing shit that's going on in your mind and all the ideas and all the thoughts and all the visions that you have that you may seem embarrassed to actually express that and actually find some space to be able to be appreciated for that, to be able to be respected for that, and to be acknowledged for who you truly are and not who we always act to be. And the person that's gonna run our first exercise is Rich Edmond-Vargas.
What's up? Everybody has a strip of blue paper, right? Or raise your hand if you don't. Okay, cool. On the left column of 5, write the 5 most important people in your life. And I encourage you to not overthink it, but be honest. Be honest. The 5 most important people to you in your life. It got to be 5. So, all right. Now on the second list of 5, that's about halfway down the paper, write top 5 things that you have to accomplish before you die. Another way of describing that is the top 5 most important goals to you. 5 things that you have to accomplish before you die. But this is just the beginning. What you're going to do is you're going to cross out 2 things on that list. Now, not in the gangbanger way like I'm crossing them out and I'm saying, therefore, them. I don't mean it like that. What we're about to do is find out what's most important to you in your life. I got here in August of 2013 after doing like a year in LA County Jail and a year at high security. I got here, I went to this group, and the first time I went, it was this group conversation talking about like what it is to be a man and what a man's supposed to be. And they pretty much were just like condemning the street life and the gangbang stuff and all that, but upholding these patriarchal ideas of manhood, like a man is supposed to be a provider and a protector and run the house, and they were condemning illegal activity, but not necessarily patriarchal activity. Somebody want to share their top 5?
you know, God is first and foremost. My child, Lania, she's 13. My mother, spiritual influence in my life. Public ministry and family.
Before I pass away, you know, I want to be a great father and husband.
Get off parole, find a career, help people. I cross off own a house and start a family.
All right, cool, thank you. What led me to commit the crimes? How I ended up here ultimately started with my insecurity. I was like a weird artsy kid, and that was cool with me in elementary school. But when I got to middle school, my peers had bought into this idea of this is what it is to be a black man, and it was the hyper violent, hyper masculine, and immediately like I picked up on the fact that that's how I was supposed to be, and that my self, like my artsy self, that wasn't good enough. So I started hanging out with gang members. I started getting high, and I pretty much got high. I got high every day I could from when I was 12 until I came to prison at 19. This is my bed, and like my desk and office and everything. So like people in prison roll their mats up so that way you can use this space to like make food or to write. And we will like use one of our sheets and hang it right here so that you can kind of use the bathroom in peace. This is like my spiritual area. So like my hero right here, Malala Yousafzai and Beyonce are like two of the people I look up to the most. And like this card that my wife sent me that says we're gonna win, which is like our thing, it's like our phrase, it's what we say. When we get to prison, you either dive deeper into the madness or you revert back to whatever you knew to be right before you got into the madness. My experience of going to prison, 2 armed robberies, showing up to court and they're like, you're fighting 150 years to life, just feeling like, I remember my homie literally passed out and I like caught him and just feeling like, whoa, like they're trying to take my life away, like this is real. The hood life was like, okay, that ain't it. I don't want to do that anymore. Like this is not, it's not worth it. Like, and reverting back to, you know, the people who always had my back and supported me. My wife, Taina, my mentor, Patrice, my best friend, Haywan, and just like analyzing everything around me and just asking them like, send me books. And they sent me bell hooks. I started reading up on it, doing a lot of reading. We did a 6-month lockdown at the high security prison I was at before I came here. And I started seeing how we as men were really destroying ourselves on some patriarchal stuff. Like, and you know, so it's like, imagine you're reading this stuff and you lower the book and you're seeing it, and you're seeing like real violence, like people getting stabbed, people getting beat up, people getting shot, like from the gun towers as things are going down. And you're just like, we don't gotta live like this, y'all, but being too scared to say it.
Top 5, I put my mom, my dad, get out of jail, have kids, and graduate.
Graduate from high school or college?
High school.
High school?
And college, whatever. Just in general.
Yes, sir.
Put my mom, my girl, you know, her daughter, get out of prison and get a job. Because, I mean, when I was little, I used to look forward. You know what I mean? I was like, yeah, I'm gonna be a gangster, you know, like, you know, running around, you know what I mean? And plus, I never had a job.
Can anybody think of a time when the people you have on this top 5 or the things you have on this top 5 right now, you've always said was important, but can you think of an instance where you literally didn't, you know, live that out?
I met the woman that would become my wife, and then my ex-wife, and we had a son, and I thought I was doing really good. I thought I was doing what I needed to do. I thought that having a job was enough, and but still that addiction that I got in an early stage of my life carried with me everywhere I went, and wherever I go, there I was.
And the only reason I know is I did it. Came in here with the board answers. Oh, what's important? My mom. Shit, my mom wasn't out there important when I was firing that pistol. My ego was just important. You stepped on my ego, I'm feeling some type of way, pow! I wasn't thinking about moms. It's BS, you feel me? When you come to prison and you start trying to figure out, well, how did I get here? Because I always saw myself as different. Like when I grew up with both my parents, and then you see like a lot of these guys, they didn't grow up with both parents in the household. They didn't graduate from high school. Like, so I came in with that era of, I'm not you guys. So when I was a kid, one of the first instances that I remember, and this is where the scar comes from, it was me and another kid, we were playing with Hot Wheels. And when me and my family came in, he was like, look, mommy, niggers. To me, I just brushed it off. Like, I didn't know at the time. I had never been faced with anything like that before. So I didn't brush it off. And then when we were playing with Hot Wheels, later on, he threw it and it cut me. And I defended myself. And in that moment, I started to confuse physical dominance with respect, because it didn't happen anymore. Like, I beat him up, now I'm not getting Hot Wheels thrown at me. So that pattern of when I'm met with a force that makes me either feel uncomfortable or less than, that was how I learned to solve it. And then, I started to confuse, people looking up to you, and then that just caused a whole nother level of insecurities and maladaptive behavior. Like, it was ridiculous.
I mean, I say these things, but I still participate. I'm still an active gang member or whatever. You know what I mean? And, you know what I mean? Like, this is my first time ever to a group right here. You know what I mean? Yeah, it's my first time. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? And I still got the little mentality. You mean I'm young? I'm 22. You know what I mean? I still got the mentality of it.
Let's keep it real. We all go to those groups because we want the chrono. We want to get out of prison. Like, that was my mindset. I'm going to do these groups because this is what I have to do if I want a chance to go home. So whether I like them or not, I'm going to go. Whether I participate or not, I'm going to go. I'm going to get that piece of paper, whether it means something or whether it doesn't. I'm going to do what I have to do to try to go home. And it's not easy to talk for any of us. It's not easy for me to open up and talk about anything. But I'm here. I'm trying.
I've been through a bunch of different groups. I don't have to. I'm not doing life. But I struggle with who I am, and I'm sick of being this way. You know what I mean? I'm tired of this. I started drinking when I was 10. I started using other drugs when I was like 14. When I was in junior high, I was wearing, I'm from a small like country town, and I was wearing these Vans, the slip-on ones, and it had like all these weird faces on it, and I had a sweater and it had like an anarchy patch on it, and it was like at lunchtime or break or something like that, and we're standing out front of the cafeteria by the vending machines, and this big dude, he just ranked me out in front of everybody that what I was wearing, I was a fag or whatever, something like that, something like that. I don't even remember what he said, but my takeaway was that I shouldn't be dressing like this, that I can't. And I went home and I stopped wearing those shoes. And I tore the patch off my sweater, and because I did not want to get beat up by this dude. He was like twice my size at the time. It's like it wasn't okay to just tell somebody that they're hurting your feelings, or even talk about that you have feelings, let alone telling somebody that they're offending you. So when somebody does something to offend you, it was taught to me that I should just hit them, and I did that quite a few times. In fact, the day that I got arrested, I don't think anybody's really a tough guy, I think people are just people. They're just normal people, and we're just told that we have to be tough guys. By the time that I figured out that I didn't need to be that way, it was too late. I had already committed a heinous act, and several more before that I never got caught for. This was just the latest in a long line of violence that I did get caught for.
I thought you'd make it, I thought you'd make it. And then the thing is like, I don't remember it. I'd have to look at it again. Awkward silence.
That's the last time you thought about it?
That I thought about Zach?
Yeah.
No. He just hit me the other day, bro. I was just like, I think we was working out. I was doing something random, and I just thinking like, bro, Zach is really dead. Like, he's really gone. Like, I'm gonna go home and he's not gonna be there. It's just weird to me to think about it like that. Like he doesn't exist no more. Like, and every time I think about him, that song comes to my mind. Cause like I found out he died. Haywan told me that night. Haywan and Charles. And the next day I started writing the song. I didn't know what else to do. I just felt like he overdosed in April of this year. Prescription pills. I just wish that I could tell you, you ain't gotta live that way.
Yeah, it's belligerent in the hotel room.
And I know it's partly my fault that you ever did. I'm mad at you, I'm sad at you, and towards our friends, I feel away.
Feel away.
Most of all, I'm just mad at the shit we did as kids. Most of all, I'm just something hot about
do
the shit
that
we did as
less.
kids.
Do that less like a verse and more like
I'm just
belligerent in the hotel room. Like
I know, but when I do it, I feel like I'm gonna start crying. I'm like trying to
cry.
control it. Like, as soon as I started doing it, I felt like I was really yelling at him.
Yeah, they could do it.
That's why I make cheesy pop music, because I don't like feeling shit. The one I just wrote. Renegade rich, I'm a big dick feminist, there's only one eye, that's a slick Rick reference. Get the bread quick, I'm a Bisquick regimen to sweat the shit round like a sickness. Cystic fibrosis, osteoporosis, chondroblastomas, the shit is in my bones. I do this for my culture, to let them know what it looked like when a nigga in his moment, who used to be homeless and robbed on some broke shit and went on the bin where he got on his grown shit. I'm showing my focus. I'm showing my focus, I'm living it, so no one is hopeless. I wrote this, so post it on social and blow up past local, go loco and loc up for yo shit.
Whole nother level. I grew up in a Christian household. My dad is an elder in the church. Pops was pretty strict. I didn't like listen to any, what he called worldly music. My dad would like have BET on our TV, but it was so he can like write sermons about what's happening in the world. So I remember being a kid sneaking into the den behind his chair just so I could watch a Snoop Dogg video. And he'd catch us and shoo us out of there. But yeah, it was like Pops was not having it. We couldn't watch The Simpsons. Like, he was just very like mindful of what we watched and what we did and who we hung with. At 15, I murdered somebody. I crossed his path. We exchanged, words and aggression. And I left, got a gun, came back and shot him. I did it because I was small. And I don't mean that physically, but I mean emotionally. Like, my self-esteem, I felt small and I wanted to feel big. And that was a chance for me to feel big. And the truth is, I didn't feel big after that. Yeah, there is no reason. It was senseless. Show of hands, who here has a brother that they love? Brother? Okay, who here has a road dog, best friend, like your boy, ride or die, right? So what we've been taught is that with your ride or die, it's that, you ride or die. And if somebody do something to that rollie or your brother, your ride or die, you're supposed to retaliate. That's what we've been taught. Don't nobody touch ours, right? So I want to tell you guys a story about my brother. My brother was murdered, duct taped and murdered, thrown in the street, left like trash. For 10 years, I was incarcerated, living with that knowledge, like, my brother gone. For 10 years, I would think about if I caught this dude, because they arrested him, found him guilty, he was doing time, and I said, if I catch him, I'm gonna do him, period. I go to visiting one day, it's about 5 days after my birthday, I turned 25. When I get in the visiting room, my mom and my sister have painted smiles on their face. I can tell something's off. sit down with my mom and my sister, and my mom points to a guy in the visiting room and says, "Who is that?" This is a brother I've been talking to for 2 years, lived on the same tier as me. I knew him as the brother, you know, Brother Jay. She looks back to my sister, looks back to me, and says, "That's him." Without any further explanation needed, I knew who she was talking about. This was the guy who duct taped and murdered my brother and left him in the street like trash. My life is over, I'm not going home, I gotta kill him. I'm fighting God, I'm shaking my fist at God, praying overnight. Like, why would you put this in front of me? You know what I gotta do now. You know what I gotta do. Why would you do this to me? And the more I argued with God, the more it became clear. Ain't nobody making you do nothing. What? Ain't nobody making me do nothing. Nobody making me retaliate and get revenge for my brother. Nobody's forcing me to have this sense of duty that I have. This is something that you're choosing. And you can make another choice. So the next morning, I sat with him at breakfast. I called him by his full name, and he looked at me like, "Bro, we've been here for 2 years. Of course you know my full name." And I said, "Man, you killed my brother." And even in that moment, I just want to get off. I just want to harm him. But the first thing out of his mouth was, "Man, I'm sorry for what I took from you." And I forgave him, without regard to what people thought of me, without regard to what kind of obligation I made myself feel for the last 10 years. I decided, I'm gonna break this cycle. I ain't gonna kill him. I'm gonna live for what I want. My mom, my sister, my freedom. Thank you. We harm people because we don't see them as people, we objectify them. If a dude is roaring up against me, he's an object, he's an obstacle, he's not a person.
You know, the other guys in the school, the other guys that I want to kick it with, all the guys on the football team, all the guys from the gang were drinking, they're smoking weed, and I wanted to fit in. So guess what I did? I started drinking and smoking weed. Whenever I drank, I realized that I had a confidence that I had never known before. I was able to express myself in a way that I had been fearful to all of my life up until that point. And then I realized, man, I could even talk to the girls now. I'm feeling good. I had this liquid courage in my system. And I was motivated and moved to go out and start talking to girls a lot more often. And I used to objectify women at that point, but I didn't know it by those terms back then, because I used to go to school and I was looking for the most beautiful girl in school. And I was thinking in my head, I'm gonna get her. And it continued to get worse as I drank more, I partied more, I started to be with more girls, and I started to look at this as a source of proving my manhood. Like when the homies gave me recognition for being able to pull the finest girl in the party, that felt good. That made me feel accepted. That made me start to think that maybe I am good enough. And that validated who I was at that point. But this way of living and this way of thinking escalated all the way to the point to where I objectified another human being at the point of taking his life. I murdered a man because I was emotionally disconnected, because I didn't know how to cope with my feelings, with the feelings of rejection. And I wanted to be accepted more than I valued another human being's life. And that's what I'm ashamed to say today. But I realized that all this was started because of patriarchy and the way that it was showing up in my family, the way that it was showing up in my culture, the way that it was showing up in my community, the way that it shows up in our world. And looking just last year, I was opposing this topic. And this year, I'm fully invested. I read some books by Bell Hooks about love, about patriarchy. And I started to get real clear on how I was and how I was living and how I was showing up and how I was loving and how that wasn't really love. How I was damaging and destroying all these relationships in my life because of these negative, distorted beliefs and views. Like men are superior to women? That's ridiculous. Like I'm supposed to be the head of the house just because I'm a man? That makes no sense.
I know there's a lot of like touchy subjects that are very uncomfortable, and I even feel uncomfortable just listening to them. But they're uncomfortable for a reason. They're uncomfortable because they stem off of some other shit that goes deeper than just a conversation that we're having in about an hour and a half. And again, it just, stories aside, hypotheticals aside. Space this on reality and as to what's really happening, what really is the problem. At the age of 3, I was diagnosed with cerebral palsy, and I was this crippled kid who was not normal and who was just always sick or never able to do things. So half of the day I would go to the special ed class, and the other half I would go to the normal class. And the kids in the normal class knew where I was at half the day. So here it was, where I had what they would call cooties, what they would call contagious cooties, and no one wanted to touch the colors, the colored pencils in the center of the table, or anything that I would touch was just contaminated with something that I had that everyone else could get. So I lived a life of solitude. I lived a life of asking my teacher if I could go out to recess 5 minutes early just so I could check out a ball and set my own rules on the handball court so that the rule of no cripples allowed wouldn't be placed. And I found myself in this quest of trying to be normal. And I entered this rat race of just constantly trying to prove myself that I was normal. How many times has that put you in a position where you don't have what you want? Where you're in a position where you're not satisfied with your life and you look at yourself and you're not happy with this? Many times we tell ourselves that that's our survival. Like, in order for me to survive, I have to be a man. I have to carry myself a certain way. And if I'm not that, then I'm gonna fake it till I make it. I'm gonna scrunch my face, I'm gonna have this tone, and I'm gonna look as aggressive as possible. And for me, being 5'1" and not really having the best abilities of fighting, it was carrying weapons. It was having something that would equalize the part that I felt lesser than.
Everybody in the prison is locked up from 9 o'clock at night until 6 in the morning. Every moving incarcerated person is in the cell at that time unless there's some medical emergency or something. So that's usually the time that we see each other because Jazz is super busy.
I gotta go deliver mail, you know.
Do you wanna go ahead.
Sing a song? Nah, thank you.
No. Now we actually are like coming up on success stories time. I'm really excited about this conversation today. We have a really good team of facilitators who are not afraid to walk up to circles full of active gang members and be like, hey, y'all need to go to success stories. Well, what's that about? Well, this is what it's about. Patriarchy, as the guys will learn today, is the biggest hindrance to our success. We all had these great dreams and stuff when we were little kids, but at some point it was more important for us to be tough. It was more important for us to be, to not back down or whatever, to buy into toxic masculinity. And everybody, and I'm willing to assert that everybody in that room, including myself, put what the patriarchal expectations that the world had on us before our own goals. It's hard for me to tell where my nervousness ends and my excitedness starts, but I'm like happy about it. This is gonna be my last one here, probably. Yeah, I gotta find Roy first. No, they're back already. I just didn't know if he was still in the shower. You got the books?
Yeah, I do.
Awesome. Thank you.
I wrote down some of the quotes that you liked. I wanted to get the clear definition of what Bell Hooks said patriarchy is. It's big because it was hard for so many people to accept it, even myself at the beginning, like we talked about. And I was having that discussion with Martin on the yard. You know, we were talking about working on him. So,
How did that go?
Not too well. He's real resistant. He's super resistant.
I was all hopeful when you said it, man. Okay.
He's in the conversation seeking to defeat why patriarchy is not just bad. He wants to say that it's good in some senses.
Like what?
Because his father was a patriarch, and he believes that if he says that patriarchy is bad, he feels like that's a condemnation of his father, and he doesn't want to go there. So it's kind of hard for people to come to grips that some things that our parents did weren't right, you know, because maybe in their mind they're thinking that that's a negative judgment and they're saying that their parents were bad parents. That's not the case. You know, you hate the evil behind what the people do.
Yeah.
And that's what I came to. That's why I was able to accept it the way that I have been.
No, I can relate. I felt the same way. Like just talking about my dad, and I felt like I was betraying him.
Yeah.
My dad was certainly living more responsibly. Like, he wasn't committing violence in the streets and stuff. Like, he wasn't in the streets at all, never smoked, never drank, no tattoos, none of that stuff. My family, who is like that, he always kept us far away from them. But the kind of violence that's like acceptable in terms of how men were supposed to be, that was still being affirmed in my house. Like, my dad told me on my first day of first grade, don't let anybody hit you. If you think they're gonna, he said, if someone hits you, hit them back, and if you think they're gonna hit you, hit them first. And he would say, my son is in the punching bag, and you know, if we get into it and we started crying, you know, he would call me Regina rather than Richard, or, you know, there's kind of this value in America that yes, men are supposed to be violent, but only when it's appropriate. Only if they work in law enforcement, or if they work in the military, or if, you know, the justifiable violence or the righteous violence or whatever. Peck argues that compartmentalization is a way to avoid feeling pain. Integrity is painful, but without it, there can be no wholeness. To be whole, men must practice integrity.
No, I think that's really big. If I would have known all this back then, I would have been a different person. I would have never committed the murder that I committed. There was a lot of things that I would have never done.
Being this patriarchal dude, you know, albeit with not that language, to have somebody calling that behavior out and being like, man, this is what got us here, and this is what's killing us, and this is what's destroying our communities. Dudes, we're not feeling it. The fear is, if I show you who I really am, that's not gonna be good enough, and I'm gonna be ostracized. And it sounds silly, like it sounds like a small fear, but it's everything. What's up, y'all? In toxic masculinity, you become a real man by doing three things: athletic skills, by dominating in that sense, by objectifying women, and by having money. So, but I'm gonna take it a little further, because ultimately, even the athletic part is really what Manny Thomas was talking about. It really comes down to violence. So the dude, the coldest football player in high school, what it always came down to was, okay, yeah, you can ball, but I can beat your ass. And that's what was ultimately was gonna decide who was the man and who wasn't, is if I can beat your ass, then I'm coming up on top. We probably never heard anybody say anything like, well, he objectifies women, therefore I feel like he's a real man. Nobody says that. But instead of saying objectifying women, what are some of the things that we hear in the community where we're talking about, oh, he's a real one because he objectifies women? He's a pimp, he's a player, he got hoes, he got bitches, right? These are some of the ways that we prop a man up. Same thing with violence. We might not say, oh, he's willing to be violent, therefore I respect his manhood. Nobody says that. But what people might say is, oh, he's with the bullshit. He's with it. What else?
He got hands.
He's with the business, he got hands. He's down.
Watch out, he ain't no punk.
He's not a punk, or he's
Watch
a good
out,
dude.
He's not a punk.
They call him knockout.
Ben gave us the 50s one.
Ben went straight to the 50s. Watch out, he's not a punk, guys.
And the money one, I mean, the money one is pretty much self-explanatory. So in our cultures, we could see how we buy into toxic masculinity. We might not use the same language they would use in a video with a bunch of psychologists, but we're familiar with this, with what toxic masculinity is. Raise your hand and say that you were raised being taught that you should embrace that. So again, if you're really willing to be honest, who actually did embrace it? So we're gonna talk about why.
But what was the other option?
Hold on. I ain't wrote on the board yet. And that was too deep for me, I didn't have an answer yet. So we're not just acting like this for no reason. We didn't make this stuff up on our own. Why do we buy into this? What are some of the payoffs we get for buying into toxic masculinity? Okay, you get to be the boss.
Glory.
Glory.
Reputation.
Somebody said acceptance. Self-esteem. I'm gonna say pride too, because that's a good one. Now, what are the costs, the long-term costs of buying into this? Life sentence.
Life sentence.
Death. I'm gonna get yours too, Chris. That was bomb though. Emotionally dead.
Unsatisfied, brother.
Ooh, I was about to say.
Bad relationships.
Loneliness.
Okay. So just based on seeing it up here, I mean, I feel like it's an obvious question, but do the payoffs seem like they're worth the cost? Absolutely not. And yet we do it all the time. So when a whole culture, right, we all do this individually. As individual men, we buy into this stuff. But when the whole culture around us buys into this, including women and all that, kids, when everybody in a society is buying into this, or most people are buying into this, we describe that culture as a patriarchal culture. So people often say, what's the difference between toxic masculinity and patriarchy? Toxic masculinity is what I'm doing just with my masculinity on the day-to-day. But when everybody on my block, everybody in my city, everybody in my state, everybody in my country is feeling that to some level, we have what's called a patriarchal society, which is not to be mixed up with the more traditional definition of the word patriarchy, which means like male leadership. Certainly we're not saying that it's bad to be a male and be a leader. We're just saying that you don't deserve to be a leader just because you're male. What's some other stuff that grows out of that when everybody's believing in that?
Oppression.
What do you mean?
Well, it oppressed me in a way to where I was not even able to express my emotions. It specifically oppresses women. Like when I think about it, how many female presidents have there been in the United States of America? And I think the answer is none. And I ask why. Maybe it has something to do with patriarchy.
I think there's gay bashing. You know what I mean? Not only just with dudes, but in church, wherever you are. You know what I mean?
Homophobia. But we'll often use gay as a code word to say, you're not following the rules. You're not doing this, so you must be gay. Why are you simping to her, bro? That's hella gay. Like, why are you being nice to her like that? Or, oh, he ain't trying to fight? That nigga's a faggot. Even though a lot of that stuff has nothing to do with homosexuality or whatever. So gangbanging is one. Like domestic violence is one. You gotta put her in check, put her in her place, whatever.
You know, she was dressed like she wanted it. Like you taking the blame off the act you committed and putting it on the person that's the victim of it.
Bomb. So I want to talk about that a little bit. That specific kind of victim blaming is called rape culture. People who rape are not just these random monsters that climb up out of the swamp. These people exist in our culture, and we make it okay. We make them think it's okay to do that when we do shit like, oh, well, what would, if a girl gets raped, we'll say things like, well, what was she wearing? Why was she even over there? Why was she drinking? And putting it all on her. Bomb. That's so true. Who grew up in a house where you were afraid of your parents? Or times when you felt like maybe you questioned if they loved you or not. So that's the kind of atmosphere of fear. We're all pretty clear on the problem. What's the solution? Roy got a quote for us that we're gonna use.
This is a book called The Will to Change by Bell Hooks. She's one of the leading feminists that writes about patriarchy. And this is a quote right here by her. It says, by learning the art of compartmentalization, dissimulation, and disassociation, men are able to see themselves as acting with integrity in cases where they are not. Their learned state of psychological denial is severe, since most men have been socialized to believe that compartmentalization is a positive practice. It feels right, it feels comfortable. To practice integrity, then, it is difficult, it hurts. Peck makes the crucial point. Integrity is painful, but without it, there can be no wholeness. To be whole, men must practice integrity.
So what she's saying is that the solution to patriarchy is to have integrity, which if like the quote said, if you think of the word integrated, being one person, being all the way whole. So not cutting off your emotions and putting them over here. I only express my emotions with these people. Or not saying, this is what's important to me up until over here, but I'm in prison, so I gotta act a certain way. Or I'm in a street, so I gotta act a certain way. Or I'm from this neighborhood, or I had this kind of background, so I gotta act a certain way. But being one person, Being that person who, whoever you put on your top 5, those goals, those people you love, living for them all the time. Even when the whole culture is saying, be like this, are you willing to put your top 5 first in those moments? And ultimately, that's a choice that you're going to have to make. But that's what we're offering, is that that is a choice that you have. You can put your top 5 first and decide to be one person, not one person with your family and one person with the homies, but one person. And that's the solution to this. If we all do that, then we build a new culture with a new tree. Thank you.
Can I get an utterance? Listen, this whole class was based out of a book that a woman wrote.
Oh, first off, so you.
Heck yeah, I'm a feminist. I think it's important that men talk about feminism explicitly, talk about patriarchy explicitly, and identify as feminists. And we haven't gone so far in success stories to be like, you should identify as a feminist. We try to show, not tell. But we're very clear, like, this is feminist literature that we're reading. This is a feminist perspective. And dudes get crazy. Like, I've had, like, people, men, we're sensitive. Like, we don't like being challenged and being called out. And I've had dudes who, like, got, like, in my face like they were gonna fight me. I've had facilitators get in my face like they were gonna fight me.
Is that not true?
So when Richie first like brought this up to me, my perspective on feminism was that women are mad and they want the position of the man, and you're gonna give me some information from a person who's living in their victimhood. I really don't care. Like, that's the perspective from the jump. Like, beyond what her gender is what she's saying true? Is bell hooks like keeping it 100? And I think she is.
We didn't hear about patriarchy and being called a bitch and all that and just accept it out the gate. We were the dudes like, like, it's not gonna happen. Yeah. So in that moment, what I do is when I see it, I recognize it, and I take that moment to say, all right, look, man, I was that dude. And then when I read the book, it just hit all my buttons. Like, oh yeah, I did believe that. I did believe that how many women I had, or had sex with, added value to me as a man. Oh, it didn't matter how much money I have, like, how good I could fight or defend myself, how good I was on the football field. When I started to see that, that's what I saw identify me as a man, and then that's what I was like, okay, wake up. What's going on? Prison basically is a microcosm of what we have in society, right? I picked up certain belief systems, and I picked up certain things from the TV that I watch, from the heroes that I was given. I mean, if we look back and we think about, let's just look at cartoons. How was Bugs Bunny solving his problems? How was, when Wile E. Coyote was chasing the Roadrunner, he was getting anvils and all types of stuff dropped on him. Now, we can say, oh, it's fun and games. It's cartoons. But your child is learning something. I'm learning that, okay, I can stop this by this. And those are all violent acts. Now, you may not choose to see it that way, but that's what it is. So you have to be vigilant in the things that are going on in your community in every aspect. Like, this isn't being done in a vacuum. And I think we lose sight of that.
Let's say I were to adopt fully this new integrity kind of mentality where, okay, I'm gonna do everything against toxic masculinity, but then I'm met with women that are calling me a bitch for having integrity, and therefore I'm feeling the pressure from the women in my life. How do I face that with integrity?
It's not easy for me to say or whatever, but I've had problems, with my ex-wife with feelings of insecurity because I wasn't bringing home enough. I wasn't doing enough.
Some of the women that he's mentioning saying, "Oh, you're a bitch." Maybe some of them will be like, "Oh, you're compassionate. You're sensitive."
My wife has called me a punk plenty of times. It doesn't even bother me today because I know what that is. Like, that's an easy button for people to press because they know usually that's the way to get you to react. 9 times out of 10, anybody calls you a punk, bitch, pussy, faggot, whatever, whether they be men or women, they looking because they know what our reaction is supposed to be according to the rules.
Who here doesn't buy into what we just said? Let's ask that question, because everybody's giving good, answers. Thank you, brother, for being honest. Tell me why.
Well, you guys are trying to teach us how to throw all this stuff out the window, but when I get out there, I'm gonna have kids, and you guys are telling me to teach them to cry, and it's okay to do this, and it's okay to do that, but yet when they go to school, kids ain't like that. I'm from Granada Hills, California, and there's a lot of white people right there, and the white people is mean sometimes, and they could be on you know what I'm saying, Benjamin? But at the end of the day, on a serious note, kids are killing themselves over being bullied at school.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? So I can understand me putting this to my life because that's what I have to do in order to stay out. But teaching this to my kid, I want to know on a real note how you guys expect me to do that.
I'm saying tell your son, tell yourself, your brother, your cousin, your mama, your auntie, all of them, to dismiss that. Because that is contributing to this. That is contributing to your son getting bullied at school. So when he goes to school and he comes back and he's like, Pop, they calling me gay because I want to play with the girls. Pop, they calling me gay because I'm crying. I'm saying it is our job to instill in him integrity. You are who you are. When I forgave the dude who killed my brother, all the stuff was popping up for me. Pop, they saying I'm gonna be a mark. Pop, they might take my stuff. Dang, I ain't really no G because I ain't did this for my brother. I ain't really no gangster like that, man. That might mean it was uncertain. But I cared about that. I cared about my mama, who before I left the visit said, don't kill him, I want you home. Who gonna do something if somebody call him a bitch? Let's ask that. Who gonna get mad and fire dude shit up for getting called a bitch? Let's address it. Like, stop bullshitting, raise your hand. Right? Now, let's ask the question, why? Why?
Pride. You know, this is what I was taught when I was younger. Certain words you don't accept, certain words mean this. When this person calls you this is how you react to it.
Okay.
So, if I was to come out this room knowing that I'm just doing everything possible to change my train of thoughts, the way I think, and I could walk in this room with somebody in the hallway right now can see me and be like, what's up with your bitch ass? My first reaction is to get off.
And in the military, we do that, but they tell us to do that, to have integrity. Honor, courage, commitment, right? I was in the Marine Corps. This is society right now. Turn on the TV. You know, our president is pretty much, he's in a cockfight with North Korea. You know, white supremacists are doing what they're doing in Charlotte. And our country is divided over this model. We're pursuing the Joneses, you know? We're objectifying women. I mean, you see it all over the magazines. And violence, you know? Who in here doesn't like guns? Right? Yeah, we don't like guns in here, right? But yeah, if a gun and ammo magazine drops, everybody wants to look at it. You know, let's keep it real. And that's what it takes. You know, being a man has to be redefined. That's what it takes.
I try to teach my boys, I thought it was right. But now I know why my boy's in a wheelchair. I know why he got shot. I know why my other boy, I'm in the county. Hey, Pops, man, you know how embarrassing that was? My son in there, what are you doing right here? I taught him all this stuff. And I used to do that to my little boy. When he came home, they dumped him in the toilet and all, man, I was pissed. I sent my other boy over there. I realized how wrong that was. I wish I could stop him now. You guys are on time still to stop all this stuff, man. My son is never gonna walk. This man knows my son. I'm not lying, I'm not making this up. It's real stuff. So I suggest you guys take this in. I wish I could express it better. I'm not that good on words, but I'm feeling it right now. I'm hearing all you guys talk, I'm feeling it. And just good luck, man.
It's a big dude, imagine him turned up.
Thank you. You got a question?
No, it's not a question. It's really a statement, basically. I feel everything you guys are saying. I appreciate all you guys' stuff, but, you know, I'm going to put some stuff out there on some personal note. I was raised by my mom. My pops was never there. The reason why I'm asking you guys these questions is because I never had my dad there. So, me being around my mom all the time, that's all I knew. I didn't know how to be a man. I learned how to be a man through trial and error. My mom showed me how to be a man, and the street showed me how to be a man from what I thought was a man. So a lot of stuff you guys are saying, I feel it, but I lived it. I was bullied growing up. I didn't have money, so people were mean to me. So that made me violent. Because you bullying me, you guys gonna bully me, you guys gonna bully me, you guys gonna bully me, there's only so much I was gonna take. I wasn't gonna kill myself, obviously, but I took violence. Now you're gonna learn not to mess with me. And then once I did that, then I got addicted to the violence because I seen what it created. This big ass dude was picking on me and now he's scared of me. What else can I do with this now? So I just adventured out on it. So like I said, I feel what you guys are saying, and you guys are saying talk to him. That's the same thing my mom used to do to me. Like, baby, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. Mama loves you. That shit didn't mean nothing when I went to school. Mama loves me. Mama loves me. Mama loves me. Mama loves. That didn't mean shit to me. That's keeping it G.
So I want to respond before we run out of time. Notice that a lot of the questions are in the form of these what ifs. And a lot of, it was spoke about earlier, like a lot of what perpetuates this shit is fear. Fear of these hypothetical situations and what's gonna happen if. So what I'm saying is we use these myths and these fears to propel actually being the bullies. Every bully I've ever met says, I hate bullies. And that's what he uses to justify being a bully.
Roy, can you touch on that one? You said you had a little something more to offer?
Yeah, I do. To be honest with you, I lived in a household where there was different forms of abuse. So as a young child feeling abused, you feel humiliated. You're terrified, especially if it's somebody within your own household or family. That's something that you believe that should never happen, and it's super confusing. So when you're really scared and confused, kids can respond in different ways. There are defensive mechanisms that come up when those situations occur. For the ones that I personally experienced is a lot of anger, a lot of rage. And there were times where it could feel like I'm less of a man because of that. And because I feel like less of a man, I feel the need to prove my manhood. And to prove my manhood, I'm displaying all those toxic masculine traits.
That was something for me as a kid. You know, I was beaten, I was molested, I was tortured, all that stuff, and I never had anywhere to go with that. And being emotionally unintelligent, I lashed out a lot to a lot of different people throughout my whole life, to where, you know, at 22, I ended up getting a bar fight and stabbing 5 people. And I think that to stem that way back when kids are little, just listen to them, you know, and be there for them. You know, you don't always have to have the perfect, most wise thing to say. You know, sometimes they just need to be heard. Breaking the cycle has been my goal since I was a little kid, basically. I knew that there was something wrong. I knew it because my dad and his dad, you know, had super broken relationships, and that carried on to my relationship with my father. You know, I never saw him. I knew that he was a violent alcoholic, and I swore I wasn't going to be that way. And it was some sort of self-fulfilling prophecy that I lived right into. And now that I have a son, it's almost like I imagine that my father felt this way, like, oh, he's a really smart kid, you know, he'll be all right. And I think that it's easy to feel that way. You know, it's easy just to let somebody else deal with it. And I know that that's condemning my son to the same fate that I ended up living. But and what I try to do is, in between conversations about Pokemon, is just instill in him some sort of emotional intelligence. You know, that it's okay to feel however he's feeling, and that he has an outlet. He can talk to me about it. And see, me and my wife are divorced, and our relationship is strained, to say the least. But I want him to be able to talk to somebody, you know. And I don't get to see him as much as I'd like. But I think that's the secret, is just understanding what we're feeling and being able to express it. Because I was never able to do that as a kid. I would cry myself to sleep at night. I would act out in school. I didn't just wake up one day and want to be violent. I didn't just wake up one day and say, you know what, I think I'm just gonna become a raging alcoholic. You know, stuff happened.
Yeah, so this is how I explained it. I guess that's what folks are asking for, is that within rape culture, right? maybe not everybody actually commits rape, but we all participate in the culture that leads to rape happening. Rapists are not these random people that have nothing to do with any of us. So when we're objectifying a woman, or we're looking at a woman in a sexual way, making sexual comments, breaking our neck, whatever, and not giving a about what she thinks or feels, seeing her as a thing rather than a person, we're contributing to rape culture. So we might not actually be raping, but we're making the first step, which is I can look at you in a sexual way whether you like it or not, which is like that kind of patriarchal entitlement. And when we create that culture, that's ultimately how rape happens. You know, everybody in GP, we like to look at ourselves like we better than other dudes because we don't have rape cases or whatever. So people always bring that up. I'm not no rapist. Why are we talking about this? But it's important that we talk about rape culture in those. And then Manny had brought up, well, how do you connect that back to somebody's success? And it comes back to compartmentalization. Like, I'm willing to look at this woman in a sexually objectifying way, or to talk bad about her, or to need the homie off the shit out of her or whatever. But if someone were to do that to my daughter, I would be upset. That's like some compartmentalization stuff. It's okay to do it over here. It's not okay to do over here. And I can't have integrity if I'm doing that. So that's another way to relate it back to the individual participant. The question is this: how is it a bad thing to say that a man is supposed to be a provider and a protector?
You're saying that you're delegating to a man like he's the only one that should be doing it, like he's the only one that can fit that position or that occupation. You're basically saying that women can't do it, that they're mentally unable to do it or physically unable to do it.
One, you're saying that a person gets their value through their gender. Like, therefore, if a man cannot provide or protect, then he's not a man. So think about somebody with ALS who's in a wheelchair who physically cannot work. If we're pushing that a man should do this and a man should do that, what we're saying is that he's not a man. And we're taking away from his self-worth. And two, we're making it seem like you get your value through being a man. Like, rather than saying, if we said a responsible person should be a provider and a protector, an adult should be a provider and protector, a parent should be a provider and protector, that's great. But by assigning it to gender, now we're making it seem like your value comes through being a man rather than being the only you that will ever exist. That's where your value comes from. And that ultimately comes down to some patriarchal stuff once we're saying that your value comes from being a man, because that's just a hop, skip, and a jump away from, like, for a lot of us, we didn't have access to being a provider through, or at least we felt like we didn't have access to being a provider through traditional means. But all the rule says is that I have to be a provider and a protector. So how many of us sold drugs to feed our kids and then patted ourselves on the back? Yeah, I'm doing what a man's supposed to do because I'm selling drugs on this yard and I'm sending it home to my kids. That's the problem with that.
Hey, and also think of, hey.
I looked at like 8 ex-drug dealers in the eye right now.
Hey, trip on this too.
Like,
hey, how many guys right here are providers or protectors? And we're men, right? How many of us are providing or protecting? How many of us are being provided for by women? I think just something to think about.
What?
Big win.
Did I eat last night? You're stupid.
So that's if there's more questions.
That's right.
We're in education.
Facilitate our homework. Hug somebody. Let's pray out.
Tony.
You have a prepaid call from Richard, an inmate at the Correctional Training Facility, Soledad, California. This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded. To accept this call, say or dial 5 now.
What's up, love?
Hey, baby. How you doing?
You know, I was asked, like, what do you think of the work, the patriarchy work that we do in success stories? And I was talking about how you really inform our work and the experiences you have, and then like telling me about them, and then I kind of know what we got to do. Like, we wouldn't talk about street harassment in success stories if it wasn't for you. We wouldn't even know what that is.
Oh no, they would know what it is.
We wouldn't know the words. I mean,
this call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
people actually push back against that language. They're like, it's not harassment, it's a compliment.
Yeah, a compliment without consent is harassment.
That's a good one. See, I'm about to say that in the next patriarchy workshop.
Just make sure you quote me. Copyright, Edmond-Vargas, Edmond.
Oh, jeez.
2017.
Hey, I love you. I gotta go. I just don't want them to call me over the thing.
I love you too. Yeah, I know.
All right. I love you.
All right. I love you too. I'm proud of you.
I'm proud of you too. Bye.
All right.
have to get up pretty early. Luckily, I'm a morning person. I know a lot of people aren't. But I usually get up around like 5:30, so that I can get ready to go. It's about a 2-hour drive down to Soledad. When he first got arrested, I was living in New Jersey, so I had to fly across the country every time I wanted to see him. So at least I don't have to do that anymore. He got arrested about 3 months after we started dating. But yeah, we had to get married in the county jail. We got married in June 2012, about a year after we started dating. I'm excited that he's coming home soon. Overall, you have, men and women who have been marginalized in the first place and then caught up, causing some kind of harm or committing some kind of violence to get caught up in prison. And then you put them in a hyper-violent environment, and most of them don't have access to programs. And then they really struggle, and then a lot of them come out even worse than they were before, with even less opportunities and more trauma. Justice looks like fixing what was broken. Safety looks like having people come home from prison who are going to be better than they were before they went away. Patriarchy teaches men not to be vulnerable, not to ask for help, which was the situation with Richard. When he lost his job and decided to commit the robbery, I told him I would have lent him the money for his rent. He knew that. But I think that patriarchy instructed him not to reach out for help. And he didn't. He decided that he was going to get it on his own, and that decision led him to be where he is. It would be really incredible to see, a man stepping up in such a serious way to battle patriarchy just in general. But to see that happen in a prison, the most hyper-violent, toxic, masculine place, is just nothing short of a miracle.
Every once in a while.
I know, I didn't bring a backup outfit today, but I was like, I can't foresee them tripping off of this, but I don't know. They have made me change these pants before, so.
Why? They were too tight?
What they literally told me
For
is.
your safety.
They literally told me they're form-fitting. That was when I got smart-ass with them and was like, yeah, I have a form and they fit.
They made you change because they were form-fitting, as opposed to...
I don't really need an ally. I don't need somebody to, just say that they're on my team. I need a comrade. I need an accomplice. I need somebody who is actually going to, show up and do the work. And that's what Richard's done. In a place where toxic masculinity is the worst, he has done, the really courageous thing to have these really difficult conversations with men and to continue to push back and push back and push back. I do a lot of organizing on the outside, but then Richard does a lot of organizing on the inside. Because I think a lot of times people think, oh yeah, I'm a male feminist, so I'm gonna hang out in all of these feminist spaces with other women. It's no, we're not the ones who need you. We know what the problems are. Go talk to your homies, go talk to your friends who are perpetuating this oppressive culture. And that's exactly what he did. And I can't ask for anything else. But I do continue to push back when I think he's being problematic.
If you ask any of these guys in this prison as to what it is that their greatest or worst memory is, most likely it'll revolve around a childhood. This is why I don't do that, and this is why I do that. Because it's who I am. Because it's how it is. Because it's what we do. And everyone around that's profiting in our minds is confirming it. But that's a lie as well.
It's understood that my father has the authority. By the time I was a teenager and he split the house, I was with my mom. So the effect of that, now she's trying to control me, trying to tell me what to do. But already in the back of my mind, I'm already got that implanted where, well, you ain't the authority, you know. My dad didn't say nothing about that. I'm gonna go out. And to the point where I just never came back home.
Like me, my father, he only had two emotions. Either he's quiet or he gets angry all the time. It's just one of the two. So I learned from him. So the only way I used to know how to express my emotions was through anger.
My first example of violence, I remember when I was 4 years old. I remember seeing my uncle beating up his girlfriend. And I was a little kid and I was scared. I was scared as hell, man. They appeared to have power and control in the household. There was some payoffs there.
It's hard. It's hard to deal with knowing things that you were taught were bullshit and putting them away and starting over, because it's like,
Is there fear to start over?
hell yeah.
Why?
It's because you don't, it's the fear, the unknown. What, you know, like, what if you don't have this that you're used to, what do you have? Nothing. You got emptiness, you got loneliness, you got not being accepted no more. You got like you conflicting within yourself. Like, who are you now?
It doesn't define you to be a man by you having to whoop somebody. It doesn't define you to be a man because you have 10 women. It doesn't define you being a man because you make the most money. You see what I'm saying?
We can sit here all day long and say we changed, we don't believe this, we don't believe this, because we're here. But when we get on them streets and circumstances are different, will we react the same then?
Yeah, but I'm really happy, Rich, that you gave me this opportunity, man. Like,
I'm really happy that you're excited about doing it.
I am.
And that we got people who are down to really push this stuff, man. Because there was a time when I was worried that when I left, it wouldn't, that the feminism would get watered down in the group. And I don't worry about that anymore. Like, I feel, especially after our last training, I feel confident about it.
What does this mean when it says like a man is defined by athletic ability? Like, we can clearly see that there's plenty of sports that involve a great deal of athleticism, but not considered manly. And there's some that are. Like, if you look at a football player and you compare it to a male ballerina, like, you would clearly see that the male ballerina wouldn't be considered manly, although that does involve a great deal of athleticism. But for a football player, you know, that the sport involves violence, you could tell that that would be more masculine according to this toxic masculine culture. So we're going to replace this, for our purposes, athleticism with violence. I want to ask you for feedback on that. Remember when I gave the presentation in front of the board? One of the guys asked me, so what, you don't like girls now? And that's farthest from the truth, and I don't want to endorse that type of behavior.
I'm challenging toxic masculinity.
Yeah.
And you're accusing me of being gay. That's the homophobic link to toxic masculinity.
That's the truth that actually happened.
Yeah, anything outside of this, we call gay.
Yeah.
If there is any possible way to take back the things that I've done to all the people I've harmed, including the people I've harmed in those robberies, especially them, then I would do it. But obviously there's not. So all one can do once you're here is try to stop stuff like that from happening in the future. Men who are not incarcerated are also living in a prison. Though they're not in a physical prison like this, I can't feel in front of everybody. I'm one way when I'm by myself, and I can only show emotion if I'm by myself, or do it in some kind of acceptable way by like having sex or by like playing music and getting high or whatever. Man, those are chains that we put on ourselves that we do not have to have.
I'm a man because I can physically dominate you. That's patriarchy. Like, if we can't see that those things are harmful, are we really seeing things clearly?
In many ways, it's handicapping us as a culture. It's keeping us from being honest about a lot of things, like, you know, what we're feeling.
We all have a story, basically. We all have pain. We all have a past. We all have stuff that we're carrying around. We all have dark secrets that we don't think anybody else is going to understand. And as soon as we start talking about it, somebody else that doesn't look like us or talk like us gets it, you know. And by opening up that unhealed wound, somebody else is getting free too with me.
You may have developed some false beliefs about yourself. You may have internalized your parents' lack of parenting skills as something that you were deficient of.
It just happens to be that instead of being a child with a problem that just happens to be able to afford a psychologist that can label it that way, we were just labeled a problem child, and we ran with it. The whole part of existing in this world has nothing to do with being a man. It has everything to do with being human.
All right, buddy.
I think we should all just grab bridges. Hey, why we gotta make everything hard? Like, you can't just stand can't just stand left, right? I like you, Brad. Come on.
By no means.
Did I start out to be vain, but the evils penetrated, started coursing through my veins.
Hustler.
Win and blow money like a vein, and that pointed out the path to start the cycle up again. But it's shame, cause I became with no sub. Pops dissed on me, single parents since birth. Mama worked hard, made less than she worth. When your father listen poor, boy, that hunger really hurts.
But what's worse?
Dying the hunger strains of being young on the block with a pocket full of pain. People throwing judgment, say my methods is insane. And the fact I said a black, I'm out and turning in this grave. And no percent hurt people, always hurt people. A cold game to stop my pain, I gotta hurt people. Scratch the thought, real talk, I gotta work people. My jeans hand me down
and my shirt peephole.
Plus I'm soulless, oh yes, no concern when I turn where my soul is. And the notice on the door say we homeless. So what's morals when you just another poor kid? No Benihana's when your mama can't afford shit. Just early morning, nigga, couple noodle forking. And my only garnish was a red rooster. Early bird gets the worm, so I'm the head rooster. Justifying my injustice, who it was just us when it's just us. Starving, listening to Marvin, carving the bad out for my sister's daughter. Nigga, I die and be a martyr. The sick and make it out what we was brought up. Either that or she the next generation, forced to face this system and they blatant racist hatred.
On me.
Why the blood tell me I was
Welcome back, everyone. I'm just going to take a moment to take everyone that's part of the team here of success stories, put them with me. And yeah, make a little wave so I don't forget anyone there. Yeah, Mani, Yor, and Kiki's there, and Chris. Do we have everybody here? No, it's missing.
Graham.
Graham, yeah, here. Here we go. So welcome back, everyone, and thank you, all of you guys, for being here. It's the third time I'm seeing the documentary, and I'm, moved again, and I'm hearing different things every time, which is good. But Manny, I want to quickly introduce you here. Because you are the co-executive director and growth coordinator at Success Stories. And you've been facilitator at CTF prison since 2017. And I wanted you to kind of introduce us a little bit to everyone who is here tonight. If we can hear a little bit of your story. I mean, we saw some of you there, and then we'll dive into our discussion. Yeah, you can unmute. Here you go.
There we go. Hi,
There
thank
you
you.
go.
First of all, thank you so much for having us. Seeing that documentary always, it's funny you said you hear something different from me. I have a host of different feelings every time I see it. But as you said, I'm Manny Thomas III. I'm the co-executive director of Success Stories. And it's an honor to be able to really come home and do the work that we love. that when we were doing it initially, we didn't know people actually cared in free society. So that's awesome. A little bit about me, I was serving a life sentence at the time. There was no guarantee that I would ever come home, and things rapidly changed after that. I've now been home since 2019. I have a 1-year-old, first-time homeowner, so life is good, and embracing feminism has changed my life. Some of the members of the team that I'd like to introduce quickly, and hopefully you'll have questions for us all. Graham is our coach development and coordinator. He's been with Success Stories for quite some time. Hugo they're all transformational coaches, by the way. Hugo is also our alumni coordinator. So when participants go through the program and finish, they have the opportunity to be a part of the alumni, where we can continue to be in community and change and transform with one another, and take and have opportunities for like job opportunities and stuff like that. Chris is now the new growth coordinator. So getting us to new places and make sure that we get the exposure that we're supposed to, and have the opportunity to offer programming to different folks. That is now Chris's responsibility. He's been doing a great job. Everybody welcome home Chris and Roy, also, who have not been home very long. Roy is a transformational coach who's been probably, out of all the coaches, him and Hugo have been with the program the longest. We've seen Roy in the documentary, and every time when we talk about objectification, I think he made the point so poignantly that I always use what he said about, we objectify people to the point where we could just take their life because they're seen as objects. And I think, I don't know how you could state that any more clearly than that. Kiki is also with us. Kiki is in charge of communications. She makes sure that we look and sound amazing as an organization, and she's also been doing a wonderful job. We're so thankful to have her part of the team. And Trini is also our transformational coach and handles a lot of our correspondence courses. One of the things that we had to adapt quickly because COVID has become the thing that it is, but we wanted to make sure that our folks still had access to meaningful programming. So we made our program able to be done through correspondence, and Trini has been taking care of that. So that is the team. I'm going to leave some time because we are always excited to hear questions and kind of like clear up anything or to just really make our stories and ourselves available to our community so that we can dismantle this thing that we call patriarchy and live in a more loving and healed way. So thank you for having it.
Yeah, thank you. I have one first question about you to all of you, is that, and someone mentioned that here, is how did you hold onto hope, onto surviving that system? Because we all know we're living in a violent society, but the jail system in the US, and for those of you that don't know, there's, I think, close to 2 million people that are incarcerated in this country. It's 20% of the world inmate population, 20% in one country. There's more inmate per capita in the US than any other country in the world. I think twice more than China, countries that we consider very repressive, twice more per capita. So how do you survive that? How do you enter that system? And you're already coming from probably places that were quite violent, but how do you survive it? How do you keep hope as an inmate in the system? I don't know who wants to answer.
Before we answer that question, I just realized that our co-executive director, Chantal, is also here, and we will not do this without her. So
yeah, Chantal, I'm sorry, I can't have you there. We can only have 9 people, so I'll bring you in when someone comes out. We can only have 9 people, but I see you there.
Well, Chantal is our co-executive director who has been with us from the beginning. And when we talk about all the things that we need in order for us to do what we do, unfortunately falls on Chantal, and she's amazing at it. And she's also kind of a wrangler because we can get out of control and lose ourselves and talk about a whole bunch of stuff. There we go. Yeah. So Chantal. Yeah, Chantal is here. And I guess since I'm unmuted, how did I keep hope is the essential question that I'm hearing, and being in that environment. A lot of the folks that you see here on the panel with me were the source of that hope. One of the things that we do when we're in situations like that is surround ourselves by like-minded people so that we can hold each other accountable. So in essence, we become each other's light as we read and grow and transform. Like that is being it really transfers to each one of us. quickly, I'll show an example. When I got to CTF, I was like basically putting myself in a shell and didn't really want to expose myself because I felt like years before that I had been doing that too much, and I did it as a protective kind of thing. And Chris would always call me on that, like, bro, we're not doing that. Like, you're gonna let us in, you're gonna let us help you. And I was lying to myself too. Like, I was because I had moved to a prison that was so far away from my family. I remember I used to say things like, because I couldn't see my parents as often. I'm like, oh, I'll be okay. And Chris was like, no, you're not okay. And like, stop telling that lie. Like, they moved you away from people who mean the most to you. So it's having those people around you that are going to hold you accountable and be that source of hope is how I kept myself hopeful about change and about what was possible about being in prison.
Anyone else that's here on the panel that for which was really difficult? Yeah, and you can unmute yourself, Graham. Yeah, if you want to share your personal story.
Hi, everyone. I'm Graham. My pronouns are he, him, his. So I really found hope through success stories and programs like Success Stories within. I didn't realize until I was offered the opportunity to challenge toxic masculinity and look at where patriarchy showed up in my life, how much desolation and despair I was really living in. And within the community that is created in Success Stories at Soledad, like there's degrees of accountability and partnership and ownership that take place that a lot of people through prejudices don't realize takes place in prison, but it actually takes place a lot. There's a lot of people who are doing the work to transform their lives. And in Success Stories, there's a unique vibe of like, of lack of judgment. And it doesn't mean that people didn't judge, but it means that when they did, they owned it. And so like one of my first encounters in Success Stories as a participant within Soledad at CTF was I was challenging the layout, basically the layout. And I was using some kind of catchy terms to challenge the layout that they had in that documentary, the 3 guidelines of toxic masculinity, the way that we value toxic masculinity. And James, 88, basically said, but why? He tore the paper up. He says, the words don't matter. The words on this paper don't matter. The facts are that we are doing it. And the question is, why do you think that it's okay to espouse these beliefs? And it wasn't from a place of judgment. It was a legitimate question that I took back to myself, that I pondered on. And the conclusion was like, why am I challenging something that I can't disagree with just to stand in front of a room and challenge it? And the answer that I came up with over the course of time, not right away, it took weeks, maybe months, was I was doing it just because of the people in the room. I was really doing it because I wanted the other participants who may or may not agree with me are going to think that I'm something. So I was modeling exactly what I was arguing against. And that kind of realization helped walk me through the gates of Soledad to come home and be where I'm at today, working with Success Stories.
Thank you. Thank you. So can one of you tell us a little bit about Success Stories today? You know, how big is your organization? You know, what you're doing, how many programs? So I'm guessing, you know, compared to the whole jail system in the US, it's a pretty rare program. I mean, you're saying there is a program like that, but I'm guessing there's not that many inmates that have access to it. So could you tell us a little bit about your work and what you're doing inside the jail system?
I don't know if anyone else wants to go. I can speak to this a little more because it falls within my responsibility. So we actually are outside of the prison system as well. We operate in many community-based organizations outside. We operate at Homeboy Industries, youth organizations within schools. We're working to really expand the scope of where we can reach and who we can communicate this message to. Within the prison system in California, we operate in 11 prisons. There's 35 prisons in California. It's quite a high number. We're working to get into all of them and into other prison systems in other states as well. We like to look at it as addressing it before someone gets incarcerated. So preventatively within schools, treatment centers, domestic violence like community organizations and things like that. Then we work within the prison system when people have already committed harm so that they can look at their behavior, and after incarceration within transitional houses, drug treatment centers, etc. So we are really trying to cover the whole scope of it so that people could address the harm that they are doing and modeling in their lives and find a more whole way of being.
Wonderful. Yeah. Something, Manny, you said in this time that I heard, I didn't hear it before. in the documentary, you say this is not happening in a vacuum. And I would like, maybe most of you or some of you to talk about that, because, the reality is that we live in a very violent society. That is on TV, that is in politics, that is in, social economics, that is in companies, corporations. It's just, this violence is everywhere. And, when I'm listening to it, I feel very lucky to have grown up in a household that was quite balanced and loving and privileged. And so I didn't go that way, but I don't think I'm different than anybody that's here. I could have gone that way in a different context. And what I'm feeling, when I was looking at the documentary every time, it feels like, oh my God, the problem is so vast, so large. It's so many institutions, including the jail system, including the justice system. What do you think would be really the things that could be done? I mean, there's people listening tonight. We have a lot of people that listen to recording. What are the things that can really be done to kind of fight that or prevent that from happening? What are the most urgent, the most important thing that we could do, and people listening here, to take some of the things you are talking about, but into our lives, into our communities, into the system around us? And is there anything we can do that it would be significant? I'd love to hear also from, Hugo and Chris and Roy and, all the people I haven't talked to before.
So I would say yes. There's something that we can all do. And I think that's the beginning of the solution, is questioning what we can do. When this was created, when we sat down, when we were able to actually formulate like the self-inquiry, the empowerment of self-inquiry, the empowerment of asking yourself, what is most important to me and what would you like to accomplish before you pass away? When really bringing everything down to that and really honestly questioning, going beyond that, and then questioning everything else that's getting in the way of that. This opens up the door for human beings to be human, to actually have the space that they never allowed themselves to have, because there's this blueprint of saying that, no, you cannot take the time to be emotional, work with feelings, or think of any other way other than following the norm of what a man is. The moment that we were able to receive that space is the moment that we were able to be authentic. And I was so surprised coming out of prison, realizing that other individuals can relate with this. We sold out theaters just on the screening, and it warmed my heart to not only recognize my humanness being felt, but feeling all the human beings in the audience and realizing and recognizing that we are all connected as human beings. So asking the question, what can we do, is first begin to have the conversation instead of outsourcing to what we may say are the solutions, because we've been so blueprinted to think that way, to actually really sit down to understand not only the ones being harmed, but the harmer, like to understand like why. And the moment we begin to have these conversations of the why is when we honestly get to the root of issues. And amazingly, I'm so proud and so glad to say that I'm surrounded by a team that have gone through those situations of really having those strong questions of not knowing when we're ever going to see freedom, but really honestly doing it for the authenticness of being a different, better person, a better human being. And just having this opportunity of being able to answer that question makes it clear that it's community-based organizations like this, like Success Stories, that allows individuals to be themselves. And amazing things happen when we allow human beings to be themselves. The potential is endless.
I greatly appreciate that question, because I noticed that a lot of the time it does sound daunting, right? It sounds like this huge thing that's like been happening for so long, and it's penetrated so many of our systems, right? It feels like, what can we do? And I think that's part of the design. Because to be quite frank, not only do we do it in our personal lives already, like we do see people as human beings. We do, do a truer form of justice when it comes to the people who are closest to us. And the system does it too, but they just don't do it with everybody. So I think what I would like to say is encourage one another. Is like, we do it, we're just not doing it enough. And to remember the points of connectivity that we have, right? Like, let's not wait I normally get on myself about this when I'm saying, what if I would have had this level of understanding and love for the person next to me before I got to prison? Like, what would I have been able to change if I would have done it earlier? So I think if we can remind ourselves our collective connectivity sooner rather than later and see, you know, this individual's problems as my problems and what solutions can we come up to that before it becomes my problem, I think that level of connectivity is what allows us to change those systems, because we will then see like, okay, the
We lost you, Manny. I don't know if you're here.
So,
we
oh,
lost
there
you.
it goes.
We lost you for a
Everybody's face.
second. Yeah.
Yeah, I just realized that when I seen everyone's face, I was like, uh-oh. Anyway, the fact, if we can remember that, to remind ourselves that one, we're already doing it, and two, we need to see like other people's problems as our problems from jump. And I think that that will cut down on the disparity, and it will get rid of it. It will create a system of change that we need. Because currently our system doesn't do that. It doesn't see people as people, and it isolates everybody else from seeing each other's problems as each other's problems. So I would just like to say that.
Yeah. So speaking, Chris, did you want to share something? I think you wanted to share something.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that because I know that when I've been in a dark place, like I had this realization that light and darkness are not equal. And so when things look surmountable and the whole room looks dark, it takes a very little bit amount of light to cast out a great amount of darkness. And so one match in a dark room will make things visible. And so I wouldn't look at how much darkness it is and how overwhelming it is. I would just look for the pinpoints of light, because it doesn't take much to ignite a person. And we're all sitting here as examples of that. And so I would tell you that supporting organizations like ours that are committed and organized in a way to combat this in a certain type of way is a first step. It's an easy step. Watching our documentary, learning the vocabulary that we use, having those conversations in the car with people that you know, that's another step. That's very, very big to ignite a small pinprick of light that can cast out a lot of darkness. And then those moments where you're in your comfort zone in the grocery store or at the gas station, and you might be observing somebody that is putting on a significant performance where they make themselves look a little monstrous. And you might see associations that say, you know what, I'm not going to reach out and connect to this person. But I can tell you right now that if you speak to the humanity in a person and maybe get out of your comfort zone in that Starbucks or inside of that Chipotle or whatever, you might really identify some commonalities. And so I would say those three things could do a lot with a little, and all we really need is a little.
Yeah, I would like to say something on this question as well. I think you started with the answer by asking the question. You know, me and my friends right here, we nerd out on words and etymology. So the word curiosity comes from a Latin word cura, which can be translated cure. So imagine if just having curiosity leads to the cure. And there's another translation that means care. Imagine if we cared enough to become curious as a society. So I think about something that Manny said in the documentary about the microcosm, like in prison, was just a smaller piece of society. So I think that when we can actually see who we are in the world, we'll begin to love and treat each other as we would love and treat ourselves. And it comes down to what we offer in the Patriarchy, Toxic Masculinity workshop. We get through the problem, and one of my favorite quotes is, "We do not seek to eliminate darkness, we simply add light." And the light at the end of the tunnel is integrity, individually and collectively. Integrity comes from another Latin word that means whole, to be complete, to be integrated, to be one. Imagine if we had a society that was in a state of integrity. And so like another thing is just identifying that like behavior is just another form of communication. So we're looking at violence. What is this person or these people trying to communicate? And so if we're able to see past the harmful behavior and look at what they're trying to communicate, I think that we can lead with empathy and perspective. And it's that empathy and perspective that leads to that connectedness that we need to be able to support each other rather than try to outcast each other. I think the tendency is to take the easy way out, the path of least resistance. And that's human nature. I would often say that laziness is at the root of all evil. And there's another thing that comes with that on the other end of the spectrum, and that's greed. And we look at capitalism. Now, what form of government would I choose? Socialism? Communism? I don't know. So I'm not sure if we can demonize an entire system or maybe integrate various positive components of each system. And maybe it's not even the system that's the problem. Maybe it's just, you know, some aspects of human nature that are left unrestrained. It could be greed perpetuated by fear. You know, the desire for dominance, for power and control that's usually rooted in another form of fear. So I think it's just us coming to terms with our own fears, being able to name our fears and shine light on them. I remember when I was a little kid, I used to be afraid that there was a monster under my bed. And my mom would come and turn on the light and walk with me so that I could look under my bed. And I realized that there was never a monster there, but in my mind, it was real. And then I went through my life making decisions based on that fear, overcompensating through toxic masculine behavior out of fear and insecurity. And so I think that that's just a part of what it took me individually to, you know, come to a point where I'm committed to nonviolence. And I think as a smaller piece of the greater whole, maybe there's a bigger picture where that may be a part of the solution for society.
One of the things, thank you, Roy, one of the things you mentioned and many men mentioned in the documentary is the violence of their childhood, you know, the violence of the parents, where they were living and all of that. So I want to weave a little bit on that and ask a little bit about how much in your program do you integrate works around trauma work and around inner child work. And because it seems like, you know, obviously if we grew up in that kind of, you know, household, pretty much I'm sure all the men that are incarcerated had some kind of violence in some kind of very difficult household or living in places like that. And so I wonder how much of that work, restoring that inner child, addressing that childhood trauma, which can take years or a lifetime. It's not just, you know, for a few years, you know, it's something we work on our whole life. How much of that is integrated in your program, and how do you see that being part of something really important in the work you do?
I like to share. My name is Trinidad. My pronouns are he, him, his. And man, I was inspired from hearing a lot of my buddies right here share about their experience and everything. And that was the biggest thing that was calling out to me. And so through success stories, we have this space where we all could just get vulnerable and share some deep stuff and some stuff that, like, you know, I may not even want to share. And Roy was my facilitator. Manny was my accountability friend, and they'll ask me those tough questions, and the tough questions that I didn't even want to face myself. And as you're saying, that trauma that I had at 7 and 8 years old, where I didn't have a voice to speak up, because every time I did have the courage to say something, I was hit with violence because they wanted to control me and do what they wanted. So therefore, I felt that I didn't matter. That, you know what I mean, anything I said after that was like, so what? You know, so I instilled that, and it just stuck in my head and it didn't go away. It didn't go away for years. And I live in a community where it's just like really bad. I grew up with just seeing women being abused on the street. But I was so terrified and feared that I didn't even have that voice to speak up, because I didn't have the courage for myself. I didn't even love myself, invest in myself enough to say, hey, you know what? I care about the next person because I love me, you know, and I don't want nothing to happen to me while I walk on these streets. And yesterday, as you're asking the question, what do we do? It's like, you know, we speak up. We find that voice when we don't have that voice. And today, because of success stories, I embrace my voice. And yesterday, I was sitting outside before I started work, and I shared this with a couple of my coworkers. And I have to share this because, you know, I feel like a sense of shame. And if I don't speak about it, then it's going to hurt more deep down inside me. And it's just going to play more, that trauma. It's going to get deeper and deeper for myself. And I heard some screaming on the street, and it was a woman. And she was screaming for bloody murder. And I was just like, man, what do I do? Like, you know, I was in prison 24 years. I don't want to be anywhere, any of that, and be misconstrued because of my jacket. But as I look up the street, I see my girlfriend's son walking to work, and he's stuck frozen, and I just still hear the woman screaming for bloody murder. And I walk out to the gate, and sure enough, I see a guy trying to rip the woman's purse away from her. And I was just like, man, what do I do? You know, and you know, I'm not going to get violent with the guy, but I'm going to make sure that I be seen, and I'm going to let him know that it's not right. So I walked over there, and the lady came running, and she got away. And sure enough, the guy took off running, but my girlfriend's son is still in the direction that he's at. And you know, I was just couldn't sit there and not do anything. I wanted to make sure, like, you know what, I'm not going to cause any harm, and I don't want to see anyone else be harmed. You know, there's a better way we could deal with this. Most likely he was going through something else that he couldn't deal with it at the moment. So, you know what I mean? I wanted to separate her to get away from the situation. She went running into the neighbor's house, and they called the cops. I was explaining to her that I don't believe in calling cops, you know, but at the end of the day, I want to make sure that she was safe, because I've been in this community for many years, and I've seen a lot of women get beat up on these streets. And I was just like, this ain't going to be continuing happening on the streets that I grew up on or that I am living on, because, you know, that's just not right for anybody else to walk up and down these streets to go to school. The mother's watching their kids go. And the dude again to come back and just threaten me. He threatened my life and everything. That's when my girlfriend's son really got scared. But at the end of the day, I was just like, man, you know, I'm okay with that threat because she's safe, you know? And now I could just go ahead and talk to him about what's going on with him and let him know, like, hey, you know, I don't know what your problems are. And he's just telling me that, you know, I couldn't talk to him, and that, you know, he knew everything better than I did. And at the end of the day, I was like, okay, everybody got away safely. My girlfriend's son's walking closer towards me. I'm going to go back to the house. I'm going to lock myself in my gate, and I'll let him be at his peace and figure out whatever's going on with him, you know? And that's what I mean. Like, I'll share with my coworker, like, I feel proud, like, man, you know, I found that voice, you know what I mean? I have that voice. It's my choice to do so. As feeding into that trauma as that little kid, like, man, like, I ain't enough. Being told that I wasn't, is just like, am I going to accept it or am I not? And here at Success Stories, you know, we challenge those things. And we see if this is holding me back and not letting me be the best person that I could be, then, you know, I need to discard that. And that's what I've been working at. Like you said, it sticks for many years and takes a while, but it's work that we do every day. Every day, those little things that we do in life that makes us like we're achieving something. So, for me, that's what it was. And because I was able to talk about this, as they say, the symptoms don't remain, you know, because if I don't talk about it, then they're going to still fester and still dig deep and get deeply rooted. So at Success Stories, we go for the root causes, traveling back to the childhood, pinpointing it and seeing how it evolved over the years from these beliefs and how we ended up twisting it a little bit more of how we want it to fit for us, or I should say for me, you know. And so thank you. I'll toss it over to whoever else wants to share.
Thank you, Trinidad. Yeah, Graham. Yeah, please.
I can cover a little. So we utilize a model that we call relate, investigate, recreate. All of us come from specifically an incarcerated background, and we have different intersecting levels of oppression. Some have levels of privilege, and some have levels of oppression. There are different intersections in which we have the most relatable coach discuss with the participants the issues that are most pressing to them. For an example I can give is we work with a group home up in Northern California called Sierra Quest Boys Home. And I was the coach that was selected for that because I have experience within the foster care system. And so in terms of relatability, we find that folks working with a coach and a group that they are most connected to, that have the most intersections, is the easiest way for them to feel safe enough to unpack the things as a group, as a collective, and work through them and process together. So that's one way that we deal with trauma, that we utilize trauma-informed care. Relate, investigate, recreate, to circle back to where I started, is basically you find that point of relation through a story. So a participant will say, oh, A, B, C, I did A, B, and C. And the coach would utilize a personal story. I also know A, B, and C. Investigate. This is why that didn't work for me. Connecting it to myself, never accusatory, never blaming. This is why this didn't work for me because of D, E, and F. Right. And then recreate. And this is an option that I have found through the tools that we're offering in Success Stories that could work more. Now, that's a very burner plate example with my A, B, C, D, E, F stuff. But I think that the point might be clear that having a coach that directly connects to the person's levels of oppression And then utilizing personal stories where we are connected is a way that we invite people into the space where they can process those deep-rooted traumas, or choose not to, but eventually know that the invitation was there. We don't force anybody to share anything. Like, we just encourage people to participate. And what we found is, in that model, more people are willing to participate at deeper levels, as you can see in the documentary. That mirrors what happens in every single group that we run, and that at greater or lesser degrees, of course, because people are different in different spaces, but that mirrors, the documentary wasn't just a show, and that's what's really amazing to us. We all lived through that, every single group that we offer today.
I just wanted to add something real quick to that. So the introduction of asking ourselves what's most important, that's the intro, then the follow through, because obviously we recognize that it's a life process. Dealing with trauma, dealing with the ups and downs of doubt, that in itself is a lifelong process. And that's a process that we support one another through the alumni program that we also offer. That's a program that continuously grows as people go through our program.
Thank you. Yeah, one of the things that was shared on the documentary, it seems like a lot of men also were, even if they agreed with what was shared and understood it, many of them say, well, yeah, but I'm going to come back on the street. I'm going to come back in that violent neighborhood. And how am I going to deal with that? You know, it's a little bit like, I don't know, someone drinking and then you put him in the liquor store. It's like, well, you know, I'm going to deal with that. So can you tell a little bit more about how do you really support that and what is done there? Because I'm feeling like, yeah, maybe they find this nice group that is really supportive in the jail they were in, but then they come back to reality, as someone said in the documentary, and what happened there? Do you have even stories, you know, that people already struggle maybe with that, or do you really found some kind of formula to really help people, even if they live back in the system, to somehow keep growing, you know, like Trinidad was sharing, you know what, I'm going to take a step up, you know, I'm going to do something different this time.
So going back to what I was speaking of and getting more in detail of what the alumni program is the alumni program is the resource center of anyone that's ever gone through success stories. And what we do is we support what's considered the top 5 most important goals, people, in any accomplishment that you want to accomplish. And we support one another in that. Perfect example is that a question was asked on the chat, like, what has happened to the individuals? What's the polar opposite of the individuals that have taken success stories? There are individuals that have been addicts. There are individuals that were addicted to one thing or another. I was dealing cell phones and tobacco while I was in prison. I had the mentality that I would never get out of prison. Just being able to have that started questioning, just being able to have the room, the space of what else can I imagine? Imagining freedom was out of the question because I was sentenced to multiple life sentences, but I put that on paper. Just being able to be around individuals that supported that allowed me to empower myself to a position where now I'm surrounded by individuals that were also doing life in the same prison that I was in and are able to own homes, are able to work jobs, are able to actually imagine. And from that imagination, we're able to support one another and realistically achieve success because it comes from within. The moment that we're able to tap into what gives us true fulfillment, the byproduct is success. And I swear, in the beginning of all of this, I would say this is a commercial. This is not real. This is not true. Manny was sentenced to life and was commuted by the governor, which is something very rare. I was sentenced to life and I was commuted by the governor. Roy was a lifer and is free. Graham spent the majority of his life and is free. Chris was sentenced to hundreds of years and is free. Trini was in prison since he was 15 years old and he is free. And there is a slew of a list of individuals that are going through success stories right now. And just by the simple knowing what's most important and how to stay committed to it, and taking those steps, but more importantly, being surrounded by people that can relate with the struggles and the obstacles that may not be too popular. Being able to be a part of an alumni that goes beyond just saying we're an alumni, but actually helps one another. We're about to have a workshop, and the workshop specifically consists on how to build credit and how to buy a home. This comes to a room filled with individuals that never thought they would actually own their own home. And now we're able to have that conversation going beyond just freedom, beyond just gratefulness for being free, but actually living a life worth living that passes on to the rest of their community. It's an amazing thing. And I appreciate you asking that, because the work isn't over. 12 weeks, 12 sessions, 12 discussions, that doesn't end or heal anything. That just brings acknowledgement that allows you to begin to heal, because we have strong discussions that, lo and behold, we were ignoring and avoiding, and now we're having, and we're able to address, we're able to grow, we're able to understand, we're able to feel without being judged. And amazing things happen when we're able to humanize one another.
One of the things I hear you asking, like, what happens for the people who don't necessarily have the success stories, right? Because we do acknowledge that there's still traumas, there's hurt, there's pain. So people may fall back into addiction, people may still cause harm, right? One of the things
just
that's
even
true
defend themselves, you know, because they go back and there's violence and they have to take a gun because that's what, you know, it's around them, you know.
Sure. What we do is we make sure that we stay close to our morals and what drives us, what our missions are, right? And what we're saying is people aren't disposable. So even in prison, right, we may have individuals who take the program and end up going to the hole or whatever. So the idea is to, one, hold them accountable. Like Graham said, him. Yeah, like the idea is to love on them to get them to a point of transformation, right? Or there may be a situation where maybe somebody didn't have the resources. So it's like, okay, let's give them the information that they need in order to transform, right? It's getting away from the punitive systems that we currently have, right? Where somebody falls back into harm and then we just punish them to the greatest extent. What we're saying is, no, we're not going to do that. And we're going to find what the need is, right? So if the need is that we deal with trauma, then we deal with trauma. If the need is that we need community and need support in that way, then we do that. If the need is a job, like, so it's, we continue to hold the line that people are not disposable and that we can love them to transformation, right? And we can give people what they need in order to transform. And we acknowledge that for everybody, like Hugo was saying, that may not be in a 12-week period, right? Everybody's journey is a little bit different, but we make sure that we have that available to that person. And I like how Graham raised his hand. Like, Graham wasn't one of the ones who went through a couple of groups and changed. Graham needed more love, right? Graham needed people to meet him where he was at, to see where he was at, and to hear him out. You would be surprised a lot of the times what would happen when we just listen to people, right? And one of the things that success stories is different is we listen without judgment. We're not here to judge nobody. We're here to give you what's possible. It's like clothing, right? Like, here, try this on. It may fit. You may like it. Might keep you warm. It may not. And you can try something else, but it's about what's possible for you if you're willing to adapt a new belief system. Also, that's what we do. We love people into transformation rather than just worry about the punitive structure that we currently have.
I want to say thank you to everyone and all of what you're sharing here. This is so powerful. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Hannah, and use she, her pronouns. And I actually stumbled across success stories on TikTok, contacted you on there, I think, and then this is kind of how we connected this space. And so I just want to really honor the power of community that you have cultivated, that those connections can happen and that these conversations can be brought into the space. There is one intersection that is coming up with that came up for me, and it has also come up in the chat box, where within the, let's say, the wellness space, or where we work, let's say with the sanctuary and the space that we hold, oftentimes there is this strange axiom or this kind of truism that people think that they need to work on themselves before they can work in community, right? Or they need to repair themselves before they can help other people, or they need to love themselves before they can love other people, right? So there's this kind of what seems to be actually quite a catch-22, because it's quite a challenging ask. And so actually it really ties in with a question from Louise, is like, how do you describe the relationship between kind of community learning or community healing and individual healing? And just elaborate on that process, or how you understood it in the way that it came across.
Yeah, I would say that
Go ahead, man.
Bad word. I'll be quick. That's a lie, right? So, in the justice system does it in the same way. It lies to people to think that people who have caused harm, when we take them and put them in prison, that somehow they're not still a part of the community, right? When we're very much still part of the community, we still affect the community, whether good or bad. And when we're saying that when we're dealing with our own harm and trauma, we need to somehow be removed, you're still a part of the community. Like, let's not believe in the illusion that like everybody has hurts and harms and has hurt or harmed. That doesn't then say you're not community, right? And in fact, by removing yourself from the community, you may have caused more harm because you may be a resource for somebody who's going through the same thing but doesn't have the courage to do so. Now, that doesn't mean people may have to join different communities, right? So if I have caused harm, maybe I need to go to another community so that the person that I have harmed feels safe and secure. But that doesn't mean that I don't still need to be a part of community. Like, I think that is the lie that the system has told us, right? We're all connected. There's that connectivity is there, and we need to be able to use that as a resource. So I would just say that, remember that, like, we're still a part of the community even during our transformation and during our harm, or whether we've caused or been the subject of harm. I'm sorry, Rod.
Oh, that's good. This kind of ties into the other question about trauma. I have this thing called the 5 T's to healing trauma, and it ties into the question about integrated, individual learning and communal learning. The 5 T's would be talking, time, trust, tears, and transformation. So we're processing through our own trauma in the process of gaining self-awareness. And as we gain self-awareness, we're processing through it. Then we can then share that to others. And it takes time. Nothing's going to happen overnight. We didn't get where we are right now overnight, and we're not going to get where we're going overnight. It takes time. And we have to build that trust, from all of the trauma that I experienced. I had some major trust issues, and the trust issues informed me that nobody cared, that I didn't matter, that I couldn't trust anyone. And that led to isolation. I could be around thousands of people and feel completely alone. And that's the thing about loneliness, is it distorts my reality. Loneliness has me convinced that people care far less than they actually do. So then we have tears. It's time to process through that pain, like cleanse my soul. And I'm modeling all this. This is what we do in success stories. We model vulnerability. And after that transformation, and this part's difficult, but I learned this from Viktor Frankl in A Man's Search for Meaning, is that we can find meaning in our suffering. And I learned this in Buddhism, that suffering exists. And you could tie in other great faiths. Christianity, Jesus says that he who endures to the end will enter into the kingdom of heaven. We're not enduring a piece of apple pie and some ice cream. So life involves suffering, and it's about finding meaning in that suffering and transforming that suffering into a sense of purpose, like we all did in a hyper violent prison yard. When we were all there before we left, there was an all-out war zone, and we were able to support each other. We built community, and we were able to get through it. And we passed the baton. There's people there still going through that same trauma. And so I think what the way I would tie this into individual learning and societal learning is through modeling. I think that our primary senses, our eyes, there's something like a quote in parenting, is like, your kids may hear what you say, but they will see what you do. So it's about how we model, like what we walk out in our day-to-day lives, and what people see is how, like they say, it's another quote, it's another quote from Christianity, but like the context of it, it says, always preach Christ, if necessary, use words. Now, like spirituality and faith outside of that, like always walk out what you believe in. And if it's necessary, use words, because there's so much power in action. As we all say, it speaks louder than words.
Thank you. I'm so moved by what is shared here, and there's just so much wisdom. I have one question for all of you, and it was, in the documentary, I realized we don't really see the system around. We don't see the guards, we don't really see the prosecutors, we don't really see, all that system. And I'm wondering, if you could share a little bit about what has been the reaction so far, or maybe at the beginning, and what is the relationship and the reactions to that system, of that system towards you guys, what you're doing. The guards, I think at some point we see one guard in the background, you know, he kind of, I think he's on his computer. I don't know if he's listening, but what has been the interaction, and what is the relationship with the system, and how much communication there is, or interest there is even from them in the work you guys are doing, and maybe any pushback, you know, that because you are potentially emptying jails and a lot of the jail system is private and is here to make money. And so can we talk a little bit about that, and how that maybe is coming to friction into a for-profit system here in this country?
I can speak to that a little bit. So in my position, I deal with various administrations at various prisons, along with Sacramento. So does Chantal and Manny and some of the other folks on staff. So on an individual perspective, like from an individual perspective, the guards may or may not like what we do, may or may not support. Some have been like avid supporters, like in terms of from their perspective, from their individual perspective. That said, because of training and implicit biases, oftentimes it comes from, oh yeah, those guys need it in there, so good. Like it comes from a very judgmental place and a very hierarchical place. In my experience, and maybe someone else has a different experience, but like their personhood, from their personhood, they can see the good in what we do. But it oftentimes comes from a hierarchical place. Like systemically, my workings with the administration, and I know that Chantal and Manny can back me on this, they are very, very much opposed to having programs in prison. They always have been. Contrary to what their messaging is through the media, contrary to the R in California, it's called California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. There is nothing rehabilitative about prison. We all know this on this call. And the fact that they've added programs is more at the behest of the communities that have pushed them to do so, and peaceful measures that we did inside, like hunger strikes, to encourage more programming to be added. All of the programs, success stories, and other programs that are like ours within the prison we were at and other prisons have been designed by people inside or people in the community who have brought them to us. Never been designed by CDCR, never been designed by anybody in their administration. I imagine, and I think it's a pretty confident assumption, that other states are very similar to that they aren't designing programs because, as you said, it is a for-profit system, correct? Like us getting out isn't in their benefit. It doesn't pay their paycheck. It doesn't pay their paychecks. It doesn't buy them houses and boats and all the fancy things that they have. So they keep us in, and they do that through a variety of different measures. But one way of doing that is the obstacles that they set up for us to get inside, even though like we're cleared to go inside through Sacramento, which is their headquarters. We are cleared to go into 11 prisons. And I can tell you firsthand that we have not been able to get into any of those 11 prisons in the last year and a half, not just because of COVID, but because they've set up a series of obstacles. And my belief is that, like Manny said earlier, it's by design. The left hand in their system often doesn't know what the right hand is doing, and they do that on purpose. It's on purpose. That way, there's never any measure of accountability. The way that we deal with that is we've created some innovative new program measures. We offer correspondence. Correspondence means our curriculum written out, going back and forth with individual participants. We're now offering that beyond the 11 prisons that we're cleared to go in to many of the prisons in the state and other states, Texas, etc. And so like we try to build our program so that it can be reached by anybody, regardless of what the system does to stop us. And I hope that answered your question. I kind of talked in a circle.
I do want to just bring just to make it clear, like whether they like us or hate us, they see the value in us to the extent that they hired us to be the solution. Whether they agree with it or not, the pendulum is swinging to where it's become so undeniable. We've been acknowledged and recognized by the Senate. It's so undeniable that what we stand for is the solution, that we genuinely go back into these places that have traumatized me in such a way, just simply to pull out the truth and shed light. And again, whether they like it or not, they allow us to go back in there because they know we are the solution.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, you did answer my question. And maybe I don't know that follow-up question is for you, Chantal, or people running the organization for you, Manny. Are you guys also looking at, kind of the other steps above that, which is a more political system, which is to the governor, to the state legislation, to try to influence. I'm thinking especially in more, progressive states, I guess, to try to implement policies that are a little bit different, where, yeah, it become real rehabilitation. It's not just punishment. It's not just, making someone suffer even more. It's about getting people out of the system, being better human being, being, trusting themselves, being healed, being like in service of the community. So do you have actions to that, or is it something you're looking at or you're involved in?
It's a game we like to play. Yeah, so I think we're definitely, particularly this year, thinking about what it looks like to have somebody thinking about those things. I don't know if necessarily right now we're directly thinking about policy in the way that you might think about like some campaigns, but we're thinking about it in terms of how do we go into different jurisdictions and become an actual recognized alternative to incarceration, right? So how do we go into these spaces where, they're arresting and sentencing young folks, and instead we go in and we say, listen, when something happens in a school, instead of expulsion, send them to success stories, right? Even better would be, let's just have success stories before that happens, right? So we are looking to, bring on someone to focus on policy, but at that level to identify jurisdictions where we can come in and say, or systems of punishment, where we can come in and say, we're actually this proven alternative to what you're doing, right? Instead of sentencing someone to, 150 years to life, send them to success stories. So that's how we're thinking about it, but absolutely, it's on our minds and our hearts. I don't know if Manny has more.
Thank you.
No, I was just saying that's absolutely it. We're trying to get to the place where we become the diversionary program, and also, quite frankly, is trying to reach people before they're in custody. Because the system is always going to do what it does. So, especially as an abolitionist, it's just how do we get to a point where we don't have to deal with you at all? And I'd rather do it in the community anyway. And it's actually, for me, it's been uplifting, right? Because you get to see the community's courage. We've been dealing with more like junior high schools and schools now. When Chantal talks about like, hey, instead of suspending a kid, send them to our program rather than punishing them, right? And I like to acknowledge that it takes a courageous person who has children in their care, and they're saying, I'm going to allow these formerly incarcerated individuals to get them to a better place. Because in the beginning, when I first got home, that was not the case. Like, people would literally tell me with their mouth, we love your program, we know we need it, but I don't know how I can get people to support you all being here. And that has shifted, and that takes courage, right? At some point, they realize that, you know what, I'm going to take the judgment off of who you are and where you've been, and I'm going to prioritize the care of our children, right? I don't want them to have to continue to go down the path that you were in, deal with custody or go to the court system and do all the other things. Like, I'm going to allow you to be there with them, to walk with them and be a very real example of what's possible for them if they decide not to change, or what's possible when they do change. So it takes us being courageous to be in them types of steps, because when you ask about like whether the system supports, and Graham said it beautifully, right? When he's talking about their personhood, they support it. But because they're a part of a system, they have to be like, oh no, I don't like it because it doesn't feed their pocket. And to me, that's exactly what it's designed to do, right? Like, the system is designed not to care, because they just want butts in bed so they can get dollars, right? Like, they don't really care. And the only time that they speak positively about programs like ours is when it's going to end up getting them more money, like, or they're saying it's a solution to a problem. Like, oh no, we have programs like these that are doing amazing work so that you can give us more money so we can continue to do it. And I'm saying we need to stop doing that. We need to do that in our communities so that we're not putting our people in the hands of systems that don't care about people, and we can care for them in a way that we know how to care for them best.
So
if I could piggyback one point on the, sorry to cut you off.
Go for it, yeah.
This is speaking to kind of to what Manny said in there, and also something I read in the chat from Noemi, which I appreciate. Thank you for the acknowledgement, and also for Compassionate Prison Projects, who's doing amazing work inside. And I want to speak to a misconception, and I think it's a broad misconception, not just in this state, but in this country and throughout the world. The idea that the system is broken, and Manny alluded to it, and I just want to expand on that fact. What if the system is doing exactly what it is designed to do? What I'm saying is it's designed to incarcerate and keep people working that are from poor, Black, and brown communities, primarily, right? Either poor or Black and brown communities. And it's to keep them there for greater lengths of time so that they can continue to build out a system, like you said, that is for profit. And so it's doing exactly what it's designed to. There are very limited loopholes. Once you're in, you're in. Some of the people on our staff have been able to navigate amazing opportunities through the governor's office, but understanding that that is limited to a very select few. People do not get second chances like that on a regular basis. It is designed to keep people in. And, you know, there's an illusion that the system, you know, it just needs, you know, we just need more compassion in prison. That's not the sake. If we were to take all of the harm out of prison, there would be treatment centers. There would be mental health hospitals. There would be no guard. There wouldn't be any of those things. If you take all of the harm out of those things, they cease to be those things. So the system is doing exactly what it's designed to do, is what I'm suggesting.
Yeah, and you know, there's a lot of research that showed that, you know, a big part of the jail system was built when slavery ended, basically, and it was just to replace that free workers and just call it different. So I can fully agree with you on how it's designed. So how do we prevent people from getting into that system? You know, Manny, you talked a little bit about that. Can you guys talk a little bit about the work you do in schools or juvenile centers? I don't know, foster care systems, I guess all the systems where potentially people are at risk to at some point end up in jail. What is the focus that you have, and what do you do in that aspect of your work?
Yeah, it's giving them a different, first of all, we allow them space to be their full emotional selves and to honor, again, what you've seen in our documentary when we talk about the top 5, is to get their behavior to line up with the things that they're saying is most important to them, right? So, and this just isn't for kids, this isn't for people who are incarcerated. Like, I've sat down with people who run successful businesses, and you can ask them to write down the things that they're saying is important to them. And if you follow that up with, is your behavior supporting that? And one of the ones that always stands out for me, I did it with somebody when I first got out. This person's actually now a billionaire. And he was naming like his family, and he had just had twins and all these other things. And I said, how much time do you spend with them? And I knew the answer was not a lot, because I knew all his time was going to building the work that he had and all that. And he knew immediately, like, oh snap, right? So there's an opportunity there. And the same way we give that opportunity to those people, we give those opportunities to those children. If you continue the path that you're on, you can end up, Trini and I just did a remarkable one with junior high kids. You can continue down that path, and that will be your choice. And you will end up doing these things. Or you have the autonomy to create a different future for yourself. And this is how you're going to do it. By finding new values and belief systems that support you in doing positive things, and building a community that's going to support you in doing that, right? So we like to acknowledge the same way in which you have community supporting you in doing bad things. You need a community that's going to support you in doing new and transformational things. And that's really what we're doing at like the school level, whether it be junior high school or high school level, is we're saying, look, you don't have to hold on to this restrictive identity of masculinity that promotes you being violent or emotionlessness, or to be driven by capitalism and your ability to gain money and all these other things. And you can realize that your value comes from being you. And when people discover for themselves that they have the power to live in that way, they're normally going to do things that serve them and serve their communities, right? When you have a kid who maybe is not getting that at home, but he now knows he can come to school and talk to a group of friends who went through a group with him, who are going to support him, and then have a mentor that's going to support him in thinking in that way, you can feel the difference in a matter of weeks when they're like, because what's actually happening is they're being told you don't have to play that part anymore. You no longer have to be an actor. You can be yourself. And when you allow people the autonomy to be themselves, the trauma that's associated with the acting that they have to do in order to measure up is something immeasurable. Most of us were doing harm because we were told that who we were initially wasn't enough. And when we shed that lie, the change, you can see it, so much so. There was a kid that was getting suspended almost every other week. And ever since we just opened the door for him and he went to success stories, and I just spoke with him the other day, and even his tone has changed. It's like, I realized the advantage that they gave me with not kicking me out of school. He would have said that at the beginning of success stories. He would have been like, fuck school. I'll get into a fight. I'll be at home chilling. I'm out with the homies. And now he's just like, nah, I don't want to do that. He literally texted me in class the other day, like, hey, bro, a lot of stuff's going on at home. I don't want to think about that. What do I do? And we just had a back and forth text for about 30 minutes. He called me out. I said, ain't you supposed to be in class paying attention right now? He was like, my bad, but I want to talk to you. Called me after school. We talked for about an hour. That's all he needed. He didn't need someone to come in with the cape and design his whole future for him. He just needed to he needed to feel supported in doing the right thing, right? And not being rewarded for doing the wrong thing. Because there's plenty of people who were rewarding him if he wouldn't have gotten into a fight, got suspended from school. But is that the reward we want him seeking? So I think we just need to remember those things, that people just want to feel supported in doing the right thing and loved. Like it really is about community healing. So.
Thank you. I
was going to add a little bit to what Manny was saying.
Yes.
I think a lot of us have learned, I know me in particular, that as a kid, they ask you that question a lot. Like, what would you tell your younger self? Like, if you can go back, and it's like, it's difficult. But the answer is like what Manny was saying. A lot of times it's like, it's not telling them anything. If anything, it might be asking a question so that they could start to speak. If my younger self could articulate and hear myself say my responses to these questions, I would have figured out a lot of my own. We tend to believe that if a person is devoid of trauma, devoid of fear, and they feel valued, that they're ultimately, they're pro-social oriented. Like, they naturally want to do good things. Like Manny said, they want to be supported in that. Our organization, especially this year, we focused on like tackling preventative spaces, places before harm is taking place, before these ideas are imprinted and made concrete and turn into these negative actions. Of course, we've already been focusing on carceral spaces, and then we're also focusing on post-carceral spaces. And in the preventative space, like Manny was saying, we really are trying to give people the opportunity to identify their own language, to really love themselves, really is one of our missions, to accept themselves and to find the value and to find out what it is that I want, instead of performing for other people, to tap into that integrity at a young age so they could articulate and feel emotions and recognize, like, I'm feeling this way. Why? What thoughts are happening in my mind? Are these thoughts true? How about I encourage my friends to have the courage to say what's really on our minds, things like that. Like, who knows what that could turn into when they enter into high school, into adulthood. And so that's what we're focused on creating right now.
Powerful. So just wanted to be conscious of time. So I would love to go around the room and give time to each and every one of you to conclude and share anything that's on your heart. But we're going to diffuse these interviews and these recordings to a lot of people. And yeah, I'd love to hear about any message you have for the people listening, anything you feel like, any way you feel your organization needs supports, any way we can, at any level, really support the work you are doing, because I feel it's such a, I have no words for the courage and the beauty of the work you're doing. So I would love to give each and every one of you here tonight the opportunity to share a little bit, maybe something you wanted to share tonight you didn't share on your stories, or share about the support you feel is needed, and any message you have for the community here that will be listening or that is listening tonight.
Quickly, let's just say again, thank you for allowing us into your space. I would say the sanctuary. I know places of refuge are well guarded and for good reason. So thank you for allowing us to be here and to share and to be remembered for something other than the worst thing we've ever done. I think that when people highlight our work, it really speaks to our personhood. In terms of support, as Chris had alluded to, can be shown in so many ways. I know that if you go on our website, we have volunteer nights. I typically like to ask for community engagement and there's places that we may not be thinking that we need to be. And if folks in the community have thought about like, this would be great here, please reach out to us. Of course, we're always, when we talk about like donations and things like that, they allow us to do what we do. They allow us to sponsor some of the programs that I was talking about with the junior high school. Some of the things that are unfortunate is we find the people who need our program.
That is a very serious look, man. He froze with.
That's bad timing. He was bringing it home.
This usually happens to Hugo on our calls. Hugo will be like really sharing a exciting story, and then he'll just stop, and we're all like,
Manny, you're back.
No, he's not.
He's not. Oh no, he was just on now. Well, I don't know if one of you wants to take over, so we can go around everyone.
Yeah, I'll share a little brief story. So just an anecdote. There was this little girl that went to the ocean because she loved the beach, and she saw that the beach was covered with starfish. There were so many starfish that she couldn't even count, and she knew that if they didn't get back into the ocean, that they would all soon die. So one by one, she began to pick up the starfish and throw them into the ocean. There was an older gentleman that came across her, curious about what she was doing. He says, "What are you doing, young girl?" And she says, "I'm saving these starfish," as she threw a starfish into the ocean. The man said to her, "You can't possibly save them all." And as she looked down at the starfish in her hand, she threw it into the ocean, and she looked at the man and she said, "Well, I saved that one." Soon, other people were moved by the wisdom of the young girl, as the man was, and they all joined to help her. And after a few hours, the whole beach was completely free of starfish, and they were back in the ocean. And I say that story to say that we can all do something. I put a quote in the chat. It says that no one can do everything, but everyone can do something. And if your heart is in this work, and if you want to invest in this work, we have a link in our bio on our Instagram account, on our TikTok. Some of y'all might have your time tied up in other things, and that's fine. But you can help us, help the communities that we work in. That's what I wanted to close with.
In terms of like supporting us, like I just want to allude to specific things that we actually have going on. So there's like a bunch of different ways you can support us. Like the individual donations, they help a lot. They do. If you do identify a site and you'd like to sponsor that site for us, we could work that way as well. We always are trying to grow our team. So we identify certain people that might be able to help us expand this work, because it's a unique quality. There's not a lot of coaches that could actually do this. If you look at how many people are coming just out of California prisons, how many people come home per year, how many of those people are actually have transformed or done the insight or done the training with which we could choose from to actually do this particular type of work and could relate in that particular type of way. So identifying those people in order to go into these different states and these different countries and the different cities is difficult. So we always look for people to help us sponsor an actual coach. There's a lot of levels, and we always invite the conversation with people in the community to actually partner with us in the growth of this organization, in the growth of its effectiveness, whether it's consulting or specialized skills or whatever the case may be. We always invite those particular type of conversations, which goes beyond just donating. It goes into ideating with us, envisioning and getting creative with us. And so we really do welcome people into that space too. So reach out with whatever idea you have, whatever idea you want to create, we will make time to have that conversation and see what we can do, because we're all about innovation.
Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Yeah, I like to share. You know, for me, I found hope in a hopeless place. You know what I mean? And that was behind those doors within success stories. And one of the things I didn't realize what success stories was really helping me out see, which was something that I wasn't. I was a pessimistic, always looking at the worst. And through success stories, it helped me become optimistic. Optimistic that anything is possible. I had life sentence. I had picked up 2 cases in prison. The first time I went to board, they told me that I was never getting out. So I believed it and I ran with it. I went and got another case just to prove like, hey, I'm gonna stay in prison anyways, because I felt like I was in charge of everything. But the optimism started kicking in even more. That through the first exercise was discovering what was most important to me and finding out my top 5, which was really manifesting my future of success. And my future of success ended up helping me visualize and understand a saying that is so powerful to me, that is optimistic, but the law of attraction, it's on its way. And as to offer and suggestions to see what you can help us out with, the biggest thing I can ask for is not even money. The way you really can help us out the most is share the link in our bio with those close to you, and so that way we can spread out even further and bring awareness. That I believe it will help us out the most and bring more people to, like you and everybody else, to contact us, and we'll reach out as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't
Graham
wanna-
or Hugo, yeah, you want to share?
I just didn't want to step away without saying I'm thankful, I'm grateful for the opportunity, the time. Investing in human beings is an amazing thing, and we broaden our perspectives every time we sit down and open up to another perspective. So thank you for having us in your home, and for having us here. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you, brother. I don't know if Graham, you want to share, or Chantal, and Manny, you can maybe end if we can hear you.
I'll just say, I'm gonna parrot what Hugo said. Greatly appreciative that y'all opened this space for us. And I really, I'm excited about the possibility of success stories. I always have been since I came onto staff, and being able to speak to people. Like, the documentary gave us tremendous access into people's lives. They've invited us in because of what the documentary presented to them. And all we want to do is continue, bringing what we have to more people. And this is just the avenue that we get to go through. So I'm greatly appreciative that y'all open this space, and I hope to hear more from you soon.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you all for sharing this space with us. I think, I echo all of what the team has said. And I also I think what I've taken from getting to work with the team for so long is that, patriarchy and capitalism and racism and all of these things take away our, try to take away our imagination, and success stories imagines a world where we love each other. I know it's corny because we're all wearing shirts that say it, but like, where we love each other without throwing, without disposability, without throwing people away, and just I encourage everyone to keep imagining this world where everyone has the resources and safety and healing that they need. So again, thank you for having us in your space.
I think there are so many parts of me that feel so grateful for this space, and for your readiness to connect. You were talking earlier around how we can, like, what do we do? What can we do? And actually walking the walk is what you're doing, and you're modeling this connection and community in all that you're doing right now. current paradigms and constructs depends on us not healing, and you stepping into these spaces and talking and trusting and showing us the way is so inspiring. And there is something that you've just kind of planted in that last moment around the invitation to co-create the possibilities for success stories is really exciting. Where even Manny, you were even speaking around, there are spaces that you don't know where you can go yet. And I think this is where the catalyst comes. And I'm just as you said that, I was like, whoa, so many kind of like, oh, okay, we're invited to co-create with you. This is really exciting. And I really look forward to how we can support each other and how our communities can grow. So feeling very grateful, excited, and just honored to be in this space with you. So thank you.
Okay, Manny, do you want to say a little thing before we're done? Are you good? Okay.
I was just gonna say I love you all. That's all I was saying before I get cut off.
Thank you so much. Feel so inspired and blessed, and excited to reach out and to continue discussions and to go further with you guys. And I hope we inspire a lot of people that were listening tonight, that people are listening on our podcast, on our YouTube channels. I mean, the work you shared speak by itself, so I won't add anything, but there's one thing I really felt is this tremendous amount of love. Sometime in this work of, kind of fighting the patriarchy, there's a lot of anger, and there's a lot of finger pointing, and there's a lot of like blaming. And I didn't hear that once. It was so empowering to hear that work done by all of you and by the people we saw in the documentary from that angle of integrity and community and care and love. That's really so powerful and so refreshing in that space too, in that space. So thank you so much for that. For me, it's really, really important, because that's really what we try to bring as voices here. So thank you for walking the talk and talking the walk, all of it. Much blessing to all of you. We'll definitely be in touch. For everybody that's listening, we're going to put links to all the channels. You can reach out to them and look at their website and LinkedIn and everything, Instagram and all that. And please, send donations. If you have some skills you think could be useful, please reach out to them. And most importantly, also, like Trinidad was saying, if you witness something, is there something that is right there in the street or in your community to really step in, to really see, what's possible to be done really on the one-on-one level. I think it's so important. Thank you so much, everyone. Wishing you a beautiful evening, and hope to connect again soon.
Thank you, everyone. Enjoy your evening.
Thank you. And we'll breathe again soon, everyone. We're in the organizing stage.
Great.
We'll find a time.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Anna. Bye.
Thank you, everyone, guys. Thank you.
Thank you all so much.